an Indian religious symbol. My husband's an Indian. Why doesn't he come to the club? I said, because you see, he's very orthodox. He won't eat things that are cooked differently from what he's accustomed to. He won't eat cakes. There are eggs in them and this and that. He doesn't come. Can we see him? I said, well, what do you want to see him for? He must be an interesting man. I said, yes, a very interesting man. He does yoga and he's a very good astrologer. Oh, a good astrologer. We go to see him. Every week I had a jeep full or 2 jeeps full of Americans. We used to bring them to our house. Now, my brother-in-law was superintendent of excise. He gave us whiskey. I never touched it. Of course, I never touched alcohol in my life. I don't like it because I like the smell of it. But anyhow, he took the whiskey. We used to distribute whiskey to them and talk. And I was never present at the talks. At most, I would tell them, you can see my cats. I have a number of cats in my room. I love all felines, cats and leopards and tigers and lions, whatever you like. They would say, oh, so many cats. Good, good, good. And are you interested in anything? What are you interested in? Interested in the war? I said, not at all. I'm interested in antiquity and cats. And in fact, I was writing a book on Akhenaten of Egypt in those days. Antiquity. So he talked with them. I never was present at the talks. But I know the Americans were delighted with his talk. They thought he was the best Democrat in the world. They presumed, without asking him, he never asked him, they presumed he must be anti-Nazi. And they started talking. And when they had eaten and drunk, they talked a lot, some of them. The most talkative, funny enough, some of the best ones for giving information were top-ranked Jewish officers in the American army. I remember one that gave us very good information. And the information would go to 4 Indians that used to cross the Burmese frontier every fortnight or so, and go straight to Yamagata's headquarters and give the information to Yamagata, the head of the Japanese in Burma. And like that, quite a number of things happened in Burma that were unexpected. Some top secret aerodromes were blown to pieces. Some units of the Allies were encircled and to surrender. Anyhow, Burma was conquered. And the Japanese entered India and into Imphal. And when they were in Imphal, we thought, now they're going up to Delhi. They didn't go, unfortunately. Anyhow, I'll always remember Mr. Mukherjee coming one day to my room when I was over midnight and telling me, so-and-so, an American Jew, has just told me that that aerodrome that we spoke of the other day, near Midkina, it has been set up into the air, bombed to pieces. I said, very good. He said, yes, and you told me that I was wrong in calling in front of that Jew, in calling Gary that fat bag, that fat sack. If I had not showed him that kind of disposition, he never would have told me anything about the aerodrome. So I suppose Goering wouldn't mind to be called in a joking manner to an American Jew, fat bag, if that's the result. What do you think? I said, I think you're a diplomat. I said, you must be diplomat. If you cannot use force of arms, you must use force of diplomacy. What can you do in the wartime? We can't support the Führer directly. We must support him, squeeze our eyes. And so that's what we did. Anyhow, the war turned badly. We expected it to turn well, it turned badly. We expected Stalingrad to fall. And while the Battle of Stalingrad was on, I remember Mr. Mukherjee sipping Greek coffee that I had prepared for him in our house, sitting next to me and telling me, look here, you have seen the Khyber Pass, the way of conquerors, these great blood-red rocks, and ochre rocks and white rocks, all sorts of rocks. It's not a blade of grass that go from Afghanistan to India. Yes, in 1936, I went through the Khyber Pass myself. It's a beautiful place. Wild. He said, imagine them now. Now here's the German army coming right through them. Imagine the echoing of the tanks And imagine the song. Wir werden weiter marschieren, wenn alles in Scherben fällt. Denn heute gehört uns Deutschland und morgen die ganze Welt. That song in the cattle path. They are the third wave, he told me. First wave, the first Aryans that came to India. Although there were several waves, they were not one. They came from the northwest. And second, the troops of Alexander. And third, this is the third wave. I said, yes, wonderful. Wonderful. And they meet with the Japanese, with our allies, they meet in Delhi, and in Delhi there'll be a big ceremony in the Red Fort, and our Führer will be Weltführer. I'm going to buy a sari to wear on that day. And I went and bought a beautiful silk sari with a border of silver swastikas, as big as that, 10 centimeters all around the border. And I didn't wear it yet. I was going to wear it at the Red Fort only, when the Führer comes. But I showed it to my mother-in-law. And my mother-in-law, an Orthodox Hindu, knowing more than I do about the right spirit of things, she said, you are not ashamed of yourself. You were a disciple of Adolf Hitler to buy such a thing. I said, why? He said, but a sari will drag on your feet. The border will touch your feet. Isn't it a shame that the holy sign, the swastika, will touch your feet? That shouldn't be done. It's an insult to the holy sign. And she was right from the Hindu point of view. You should never have a holy sign on a sari border, because the sari border touches one's feet. It's not right. So I said, all right, I won't wear it. I'll buy something else. He said, buy something else with a different pattern. The swastika, the holy swastika, must not touch your feet. Anyhow, that sari I took back to Europe. It was stolen from me in 1946, with many other saris. In my suitcase. It was stolen in the station in Paris, Saint-Lazare station. In the meantime, things went on, and the war went worse and worse. Worse and worse. Whatever we did, it was useless. We felt it was useless. So, in 1944, October 44, I had enough of it. I didn't want to know when the capitulation would come. So, I left my cats in the charge of Mr. Mukherjee and of the servant we had with, a very reliable, good servant. And I took the train for the south. I left Calcutta. And I traveled all sorts of sacred places and temples and places where I had no risk of meeting anybody. I didn't want to know when the capitulation would come. I saw, on my way, I saw awful things. I was in a train between, I don't remember what place, and Tirichendur in the south of India once. And there was a gentleman in the same compartment. And he was holding a newspaper in English. And I read upside down the headline of his paper. Berlin is an inferno. I felt cold. And anyhow, I went through small towns, and I kept to temples, and I kept to the Hindus not concerned with politics. I avoided newspapers, and I didn't know when the capitulation came. I knew it 3 weeks later. I was in a place called Sringeri, on the western coast, or rather on the Ghats, looking over the western coast. It's a very celebrated place. It's the birthplace of one of the greatest Indians of all times, Sankaracharya of the 8th century. The one who wiped out Buddhism from India and restored the old Aryan values of Hinduism. Buddhism was casteless, you see. Hinduism is not. And I went in a cafe there to have a cup of coffee. I was staying at the Duck Bungalow, place for tourists. And in the cafe, there were two men from Hyderabad. Two Mohammedans. Mohammedans or not, I don't know. Anyhow, they were speaking Urdu. I don't know the language, Telugu. I don't know the language of Sringeri, the language of any language of the south, in fact. Any of the Dravidian languages. But I can understand Urdu. And they were saying, it's 3 weeks already since in Europe the fight is finished. So I knew it was finished. And I felt very cold. I didn't even finish my coffee. I felt very depressed. And on my way back, in one of the stations of South India, there was no place, at any place where they have rooms for tourists. I was tired. I went and slept in the grass outside the station. And a policeman came. Hey, my G, you Joe, old mother, you get up. He gave me a kick to kick me up. And I got up, but I was angry. I looked at his number and I went to report him. This man has mishandled me, he gave me a kick. And he won't allow me to sleep in the grass. I don't know where to sleep. There was, of course, a kind of place for women, with women and children and babies crying and radio going on. I couldn't sleep there. I told him so. His chief came and said to me in front of him, is it this man? I said, yes, it's this man. Shall I dismiss him? He has 8 children. I said, no, don't dismiss him. Not because he has 8 children, I couldn't care less how many children he has, but because I cannot dismiss the responsible people for this catastrophe in Europe. Why should I? Why should I bear a grudge to this fool? He's just a small man. He is not responsible for anything except for kicking me. Let him kick me, it doesn't matter. I deserve it. I deserve it because I'm on the defeated side. We shouldn't be defeated. And please don't dismiss him at all. What I would like to dismiss is Roosevelt, who was dead already. Roosevelt, Churchill, Stalin, these people. I can do nothing against them. Why should I do anything against the poor man? That's what I answered. And the man was so grateful to me. Savitri, so grateful to you. See, I have a big family. They're depending on me. I said, all right. You are just one man among millions. And I went back to Calcutta in July 45. I am all the end of 44, all the beginning of 45 till July, I was traveling in different parts of India, all alone, trying not to know what was coming, what was happening in Europe. So I entered the house, and Mr. Mukherjee opened the door, and the first thing I told him in Bengali, Ki khabar? What is the news? And he said, Ki khabar? 4 zones. That's all. Germany cut in 4. And we both felt very depressed. He said to me, don't feel so depressed, because it has to go on. The things have to turn. This is the dark age. This is Kali Yuga, the dark age. What they call the worst age in the succession of 4 ages. You can't expect anything better. But after Kali Yuga, the Redeemer, the one who is to put an end to this succession of ages, Kalki, he must come. He couldn't come until his forerunner came. His forerunner is Adolf Hitler. He couldn't win the war because he was nothing but the forerunner. He wasn't the one. He said so himself, actually he did. He told us on screen, I'm not the one who is to come. I'm only his forerunner. I'm preparing the most urgent work, that's all, to prepare his coming. And you'll see, you'll live and see the rest. I said, I wish I had been in Europe and I would have died now. He said, probably you're destined to live. Everybody mustn't die. If everybody in the movement dies, then there's no more movement. All right. Then, what happened afterwards? July, August, September, October came. There was the yearly festivals, Durga festival and the Kali festival. Kali is the dark goddess, dark blue goddess. We call her also Shyama, the dark blue one. She is supposed to represent the strength behind the Shiva entity, that is to say the destroyer. Destroyer and creator. He is destroyer and creator, but all the gods have its Shakti a female entity next to them called the consort of the god, and she is the energetic side. So, Kali, dark blue, with 4 arms, 2 arms holding one a sword and one cut off head, and the 2 other arms blessing. She is the author of earthquakes, the author of volcanoes, the author of all that's destructive, and at the same time she makes the corn grow. She's the universal mother. There's a great festival in honor of her in October. First of Durga, then of her. I went to both festivals. And she's the avenger. And I will remember myself. I took part in the festival like a frantic person. The women smear their hands and faces with red and purple on that occasion. I smeared myself too. I did what they did. And I can see myself still in the Kalighat temple in Calcutta, in front of the statue, with the drums beating and resounding in me. And I would tell the Nuremberg trial was on at that time. It must have been in November. It had just begun, or it was going to begin. Mother, dark blue mother, avenged them. Avenged them, the martyrs of Nuremberg, because those are going to be, I knew they were going to be killed. Avenge all those that they are going to now oppress. A terrible time is coming, but help us to come out of it. And that idea of the dark blue mother has followed me all through my years in Europe. I'll explain you that just now. Anyhow, end of 45, I went back to Europe. I gave my cats in charge to some friend I knew, a very good man, that was living at the barracks in Alipur. He told me I'll distribute them in the kitchens of the barracks. They'll have more than enough to eat and drink. 2 of them, out of the 20 or 30 I had, 2 of them Mr. Mukherjee kept. And I left. Why did I leave? It was heartbreaking to me to leave my cats. And to leave Mr. Mukherjee also. But I wanted to see Europe again. And I wanted to take part in whatever resistance there could be. I wanted to show my defiance against the victors at any cost. I said, I just scribble on the walls, I'll distribute papers, I'll do what I can, but I must go. But I couldn't go to Germany. To go to Germany, I could have gone to Germany if I had been one of the followers of de Gaulle, for instance, or something like that. I could have worked with the Allies. But being what I am, I couldn't go. Directly, anyhow. I said, all right, I'll go to England, and from England I'll go. Or I'll go to France, and from there I'll go. I'll manage. So I went to England. I went to England, and the first thing I saw in Oxford Street, there are other things I saw, but I told, as one of the episodes of my first landing in England, I've told in my cat book, Long Whiskers and the Two-Legged Goddess. I don't know if you have that book. I think Mr. Cinder has it. It's a story. It's a true story. It's 15 years of my life in connection with cats. It's called The True Story of a Most Objectionable Nazi and Half a Dozen Cats. Anyhow, that episode I've related in that book. So I let it alone now. The second episode I saw was a streamer across Oxford Street. Nazi atrocities, 1.5 shilling entrance. They were showing photographs, so-called photographs, propaganda. I didn't go in, naturally. I wasn't going to spend 1.5 shillings for nothing to see nonsense. And even if it were true, I couldn't care less. I lived in England. Wherever I went, the radio. I didn't listen to radio. I never listened to it. I never had a radio nor a television set. And I don't want one. But when I went to people's houses, I had to listen to the radio. I had to hear it. The same old stuff all the time. All the time. And on my way back, on my way home, on the ship already, the denazification, the re-education of Germany, the reintegration of the German people in the community of Christian nations, and all such kind of things. I hated it. If I had not felt that perhaps one day the victors would be even in a worse plight than I saw my comrades, I would have thrown myself into the sea. from the top deck. And I couldn't do it, because I thought to myself, one day you might see better. You might see the revenge. And ever since then, well, ever since the end of the war, I would say, and especially wherever I went, my two main occupations were feeding camps, feeding stray animals, especially cats, and gloating over any nasty thing that might happen to any of the victims of 1945. So I landed in England and I got disgusted. And after a very short time, I said I must go to Europe, to France, at least to see my mother again. I didn't know anything better, just a card, a word now and then. I went to France only to know that my mother had been in the French resistance. And that separated. I loved her deeply until then, but that separated us forever. That separated us completely. Although I said to myself, she has given me my Viking blood. She's a descendant of the Vikings of Jutland, North Denmark. First of our family came to England in the 10th century. According to it, they were not even Christians when they first came over. They were worshippers of Odin and Thor. And I have their blood. Why did she go into that nasty organization of the French resistance? Why did she allow herself to be taken in? Pity for the poor Jews. And that put me against them even more. Anyhow, I didn't stay long. I went back to England. And as soon as I possibly could, I thought to myself, I'll go to Iceland. Iceland is a faraway place. I won't hear anything of this nonsense again. And on the 8th of November 46, I sailed to Iceland from Hull. I had no money except 25 pounds. The boat cost 20 pounds. I landed in Reykjavik with 5 pounds. The room at the Borg Hotel costed 5 pounds. I could stay one day, or rather one night, even without the breakfast. So I went to the Salvation Army. Where should I go? And I told the Salvation Army, I said I came here to learn Icelandic, and I'm interested in the language, and I'd like to get a job. And they said, we have no job, unfortunately, not for you with your doctorate and your MSc and MA degrees. Only job we have is a job of a maid servant in a farm, some miles from Reykjavik, to wash the plates. I said, give me that job. They said, you'll have your afternoons free. You'll be able to learn Icelandic in the afternoons. So I went, and I washed plates for a month in an Icelandic farm. I picked up a little Icelandic, not much of course. And I continued picking it up, I continued reading my grammar, improving as much as I could. I admired the Nordic type of the Icelanders. Beautiful people. Beautiful people. And to think that so many of them were on the other side, against all I stand for, that put me out. But they were beautiful. And one day I had a call. The Icelandic farm has a telephone. Iceland is extremely modern land. Very, very good. And the phone came from an Icelander of Reykjavik telling me he had an Austrian wife. He would like me to live in a room he would give me for nothing. Only condition was that I would speak French with his Austrian wife. I said, all right. I came over. The dog of the farm followed me during the 10 miles, all through the snow. I caressed the dog, and he even came to the home of this Icelander. And he had something to eat and went back. I stayed there. I stayed there nearly a year. I saw the eruption of the Hekla, the Mount Hekla, on the 29th of March, 47. It started. And it lasted practically a whole year. I went to see it on the 4th of April, and I spent the night of the 5th of April on the slopes of the erupting volcano. I wanted to spend the first night there, but the people that were with me took my clothes and I had to go down again too, because I couldn't stay the whole night, snowy night with no clothes, no overcoat. Second night I went up by myself, 11 o'clock at night, up the volcano. I went up to 1 kilometer back from the big crater. There were five small craters and 2 big ones. And I admired it. Imagine a snowy landscape of silver. I suppose you have the same in Canada. Must be looking the same. The full moon over that, in a violet sky. And in front of the full moon, a panache of volcanic ash, volcanic smoke, black as can be. And hanging in the sky, beautiful northern lights, green and purple, greenish yellow, moving like that, and purple fringe. It was beautiful. I was in front of the lava stream. The lava of the Hekla Mount is an acid lava, because it contains 60 to 65% of silicates. It is thick. It doesn't run like water, like the Vesuvius lava or like the Stromboli's lava. It takes time to walks a few meters per day. And the top of it is with a crust as thick as about 5 centimeters, perhaps more. And when that breaks under the pressure of boulders from inside, it makes a queer noise like broken crockery. I was there going up and down along the stream for the whole night. And I wanted to go around the stream and go nearer to the crater. But some scientists that were there told me, don't do that, because the 2 lava streams might come into one, and you'll be in an island surrounded with lava. You won't be able to come out. So I avoided doing that. Suddenly, flames came in the north. 2, 3 places. New, tiny little craters. I fled, of course. But all the time, what impressed me was the roaring of the volcano. Like the original sound Om. There is in Hindu tradition, they say the original sound of creation is Om. When the volcano says every 2 or 3 seconds, Om, Om, Om. And the earth is trembling under your feet all the time. Anyhow, I waited. I saw the sunrise over that beautiful landscape. And I tried to come down. Instead of coming down, I lost myself. And I had in my hands a big slice of lava. I had some small ones too, but I had a big one of about 10 or 15 kilos. There was a boulder that flung itself out of the lava stream in front of me, and it came rushing in front of my face at about 15 or 10 centimeters from my face. So that if it had hit me, I wouldn't be here to speak. And then it went cold, and when it became cold, I took a big piece, and carried it about. I said, I'm going to give that to some friends when they come back. But it was heavy, and I was getting exhausted. And at one time, I couldn't find my way back. Absolutely couldn't find my way back. I started weeping out of desperation. I said, I crossed the river to come here. Where's the river? In the end, I found the river. I went down, and I left the big boulder alone. I couldn't carry it any longer. And then I saw somebody on the bank of the river. I saw 2 children. I called them. They ran away at my sight. And I saw the man. And I asked him, I said, the so-and-so farm, the farm from which I had started, where is it? He said, very near, around the corner. You go down and you turn left, it's around the corner. I got back to my farm. And I looked at myself in the looking glass. When I saw myself in the looking glass, I understood why the children fled. My face was black, with volcanic ash and smoke, absolutely black. And my eyes were red, there was volcanic ash in them, and they were aching, and tears in the black, white tears in the black. I looked off. I confronted them. Anyhow, I washed my face, and sat down, I had a cup of coffee, I had a piece of bread and butter, and the day passed on, and I went back to the place where I was staying, just a few miles away from the volcano. But that was a unique experience. I love volcanoes. I would like to, if I had money and opportunity, I'd like to see all the volcanoes of the earth. I'd like to hear the Chimborazo and the Cotopaxi. of the equator. I'd love to hear the roaring, see the lava streams. I'd love this. I remember an expression that was familiar to us in school about the Pacific Ocean, la ceinture de feu du Pacifique, the far belt of the Pacific, Japan, Alaska, South America, all around all that. I'd love to see it, but I only saw 3 in my life. I don't know if I will live long enough to see another one. Anyhow, in the summer of that year, I had a few pupils. I lived in Iceland. I got to learn Icelandic. I used to speak fluently. It's a language very akin to German. And when I knew Icelandic and could hear the radio and could hear people speak, I thought it was no better than England. It was nothing worth changing. Only the landscape was worth it. But the mentality of the people was just the same. The same stupid anti-Nazi mentality. Fed on propaganda and fed on reaction to anything that hurts human beings. I wouldn't say I was never taken in by the propaganda. No! I believed it, as a damn fool I probably was. I believed it all. The 6 million Jews, I believed it till I read the book of Bus. But I didn't care. I didn't care because I had my love of animals that protected me. I said, as long as man commits such atrocities on animals, in the name of science, in the name of sport, in the name of eating, in the name of whatever you like, fur industry, I have no time for atrocities on human beings, especially on enemies. I don't care what happens to them. Finished. That was my reaction. It is not the reaction of the average two-legged mammal. So the average two-legged mammal was anti-Nazi, and I was not. I could never be. I'm not against today. I'm not making a fuss about, say, a man like Amin Dada in Africa. Especially when Amin Dada says he admires Hitler. I'm not very fat, a Negro admiring Hitler. I'm not very much, I would say, enthusiastic about that. He wouldn't be enthusiastic about it if he were alive. But anyhow, better be an admirer of his than an enemy. And he says that he was a very remarkable man, and he would even like to erect a statue to him in Uganda. All right. Anyhow, what he does to his Ugandan compatriots, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less. And the same thing for the Jews. When they used to tell me 6 million, I said, pity it's not 16 million. If it was 16 million, it would be your question would be solved already long ago. That's all my answer was. Whatever it is, the time went on. And then I came back to India. When did I come back? I came back in 57. In the meantime, I went to Germany. And I had quite a long history in Germany. I went back to Germany through Sweden. I had to live in England somehow. I came back to England from Iceland. I had to live. I got a job in the dancing company of Ram Gopal as a dresser. I had to take care of the costumes of the girls and all that. It was not that we paid, £5 a week in England, £10 a week abroad. I was taken to France, I was taken to Norway, I was taken to Sweden. We stayed 2 months and a half in Sweden. And that took me to June of 48. Of course, I didn't like the surroundings very much. And not only the surroundings in Sweden, but the surroundings in the company. The stage manager, Mr. Bentoff, was a Jew. A Jew that said in the train he'd like to see the larders full and the arsenals empty in Germany, naturally. And I hated him for that. And the impresario was another Jew, Mr. Braunschweig. A little man, fat, with tiny little legs, very small bones, and they looked like two threads, and the fat body on that. He was very ill. Anyhow, even if he had not been ugly, he was a damn Jew. And from Sweden, in Sweden, first of all, on the 6th of June, I met somebody extraordinary. I met Sven Edin. I wanted to meet him. I knew he was one of us, our people. But they told me Svenadin meets nobody after 45. He doesn't want to meet anybody. You can try. So I wrote a letter to him and he said, yes, you can come on Sunday. You can come at 2 o'clock. I came there at 2 o'clock and I told him, I said, you see, we are going to Germany on the 14th. I've been spending 2 or 3 nights, up all night, writing papers. I intend to spend all my salary in Sweden, buying chocolate, sardines, butter, cigarettes, putting a paper in each thing, each box, and throwing them from the windows of the Nord Express. We're going to pass through Germany. And I'd like to know, can we have any hope? He said, why do you say, can we have any hope? Do you have no hope? I said, well, I'm doing this just as an act of defiance. But what to do? Those of Nuremberg, we have killed them. So Nadine said, don't fear, Germany has no such men. I said, yes, but when will they appear? They'll appear in time. And I said to him, what about the Führer? Is he dead or alive? He said, whether he's dead or alive, he's eternal. What does it matter to you? I said, I'll never see him if he's not alive. Well, even if you do see him, what difference will it make? The war is lost anyhow. And his ideas are true anyhow, even with the lost war. I said, you're right. You're right. And with this talk, and with the encouragement he gave me, he said, you can distribute your papers if you like, all through Germany. If you get into trouble, I said, I don't care. I don't care if I end my life in an Allied concentration camp. In that case, distribute and carry on. I felt my wings, my old wings were growing again. And when I went back, he wanted to keep me at supper, if you please. I never expected it. He said, it's 7 o'clock now, you can have supper with me. I said, at 7 o'clock I must be at the theatre. It's a night show. I have to be there, it's my job. He said, all right. So I went. First person I meet in the theatre is Bentov. He said, Mrs. Mukherjee, what happened to you? I said, nothing happened to me. You look 20 years younger. I said, do I? I said, I met a great man. What kind of great man? I said, Svenadin, the great explorer of Central Asia, the one who found out the real way the Lob Nor and other Central Asian lakes, they go around and around and around and follow the same route. He said, for that, you are so pleased to meet that man? I said, yes, I am. I'm interested in archaeology and in exploration. What can you expect? He didn't believe me, of course. He found it queer. We didn't find it queer for long. We went through Germany, went back through Germany in the night of the 14th. 15th, we were in Flensburg. And 15th at night, when we left Flensburg, we went through Sweden and Denmark. I saw the Baltic Sea in the sunshine in the morning. I said, it's perhaps the last time I'm seeing anything beautiful like this. He said, if they put me in the camp, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter a bit. And at Flensburg I started doing what I wanted to do. What I described, or tried to describe in Gold in the France. I stood at the window, the corridor of the Nord Express. I refused to eat anything. Refused to drink anything. As long as we would be on German territory. I knew the Germans of those days were starving. I said, I'd do like that. Neither sleep, nor eat, nor drink. I was standing there and putting out my leaflets. This is the packets. Packets of cigars, packets of cigarettes, packets of this, packets of that. The road was along the railway. I could distribute as many as I liked. I saw a young couple pick up a packet of cigarettes. Cigarettes, they said, cigarettes. All right, they picked it up. I thought to myself, they're going to open it and they'll find my leaflets inside. Good. And it went on like that. All night. In the night, middle of the night, at Duisburg. I'll never forget this. I had no more packets to distribute, except one packet of butter I was keeping for Arkin. I put leaflets, as many as I could, in my Icelandic cloak, and threw that cloak on the platform. Some railway employee took it. 2 railway employees, in fact. They came into the compartment. It was pitch dark. Everybody was sleeping. I was alone in the corridor. They asked me, they said, "You speak German?" I said, "Yes." "You sent out that cloak?" I said, "Yes." "It's a good cloak," I said. "It's an Icelandic cloak." "Yes," they said, "but there are dangerous papers in them." "Did you know about these papers?" I said, "Yes, of course I knew it. I wrote them." "So you know what you're doing?" I said, "Yes, I know what I'm doing." "And why do you do it in that case?" I said, "I'm doing it because for the last 20 years at least, I've been revering Adolf Hitler and loving his people because they are his people. And I expected them to say, 'All right, you're under arrest. Come along.' That was my expectation. Instead of that, one of them with tears in his eyes put out his hand to me and said, 'Wir danken Ihnen im Namen des ganzen Deutschlands.' And I felt so moved. It's one of the greatest days or the greatest nights in my life, along with the night on the Hekla. It's equal to the night on the Hekla. I was so pleased. He said, "But next time, don't throw your cloak out where there are many people. Throw it out in the station when nobody is present and the train is going on." I did that. We reached Aachen. There I gave out my last packet, some butter, and a man took it and went away on the bicycle. In the distance I saw a house. It was no longer a house, nothing but a cellar. In front of the cellar entrance there were 2 plates and 2 cats, each one eating in the plate. I said, "Good for you, German people. You're yourself starving and still you think about the poor cats." I blessed me. And then I thought of something else. I thought, dear me, 500 people from Flensburg to Aachen have taken leaflets of mine. They could have had a good salary or some money. They could have had milk for their children for 8 days if they had gone to the police and said, "These things are falling from the windows of the Nord Express," and I would be arrested. And not one of them did it. Not one of them did it. Heil dir, mein Führungsvolk. I'll come back. And I managed to come back. But how to come back? How to come back? I had no military permit, and it took 6 months to have one, and they wouldn't give one to me. England wouldn't give one to me. I tried to get a military permit and never got one. So one day, I prepared some leaflets, had them printed in England by a Eastern European. That was, I mean to say, on our side, more or less. He printed them. And I came to Paris. And in Paris, I telephoned to Georgette Soustel, the wife of Mr. Soustel, the right hand of de Gaulle. She had been in school with me. She was quite astonished. "You were in Europe? I thought you were in India." I said, "Yes, I was in India. I'm in Europe now." "And what do you want?" I said, "I'd like to go to Germany." "What do you want to go to Germany for?" I said, "Just to write a book. A sort of reporters. I'm tired of writing about the antiquity. I want to write about something else." "Can your husband give me a permit?" I said, "I can't get one from England." He said, "All right, we'll get you a permit, all right. What's wrong with that? What were you doing, by the way, during the war?" I said, "During the war, I was feeding cats in Calcutta. I always did love cats." "All right," she said, "you always were loving of cats, I know that. So you were feeding cats in Calcutta?" I said, "Yes." I said, "What else do you wish me to do?" I couldn't do anything. I didn't do any resistance like you because first of all I was far away. I didn't do anything. "Oh, I see. Good. So, in 2 days I had my permit. The next day I was in the train, Saarbrücken, and then Germany. I distributed my leaflets, as you know, in Gold in the Furnace. I described it all. I'm not going to describe it again, second time. But this is the way I went. Now, after that I lived in Germany for some time. After my release, I was astonished they released me so soon. It seems they released me under the pressure, I would say the request of the Indian government. And Mr. Mukherjee put the Indian government in motion. I told him, "Why did you do that?" He said, "Because you're more useful outside than inside." That's why I did. I said, "Good." And then I was forbidden to come back to Germany for 5 years. I came back a month later or some month. Once I came back. I came back, but not as Mukherjee, as Portas, my maiden name, with a Greek passport. I came back, and I started teaching. Mr. Mukherjee would send me money now and then. I had a few episodes that I described in Long Whiskers and the Two Little Goddess. I had a cat. And when I had to leave Germany in 57, I went back to India. Why did I go back to India? I went back to India for one sole reason. I could not publish Pilgrimage and Defiance. Defiance, yes. Defiance was published in India by Mr. Mukherjee at his expense. So was Golden Defiance. He published these books for us. But Pilgrimage, he could not do it. He had no more any money, no more enough sufficient money. So I went back to India to publish that and to publish also Lightning and the Sun. And I stayed there 3 years. I worked 3 years to finance these books. I financed them and came back. I worked as a field interpreter for 3 German engineers from the East Zone, and it happened to be that they were, though they were from the East Zone, well, one was of course not a communist, but he was on the side of the capitalists, Adenauer. The 2 others, especially one, was one of ours. But of course he couldn't say so, East Zone, any more than in the West Zone. That's about all I could say for the period up till 1960. 1960 I came back to Europe. My mother died in 1960. I came back to Europe, but I didn't reach Europe before she was dead. She died before. And I got a job as a stopgap teacher in France. And with the money of that job, I started preparing to publish other books. I financed my Long Whiskers and the Two Legged Goddess. I financed Impeachment of Man, which had not been published since 1945, because I had no money. I financed it then. No, that was published in 60, excuse me. That was published in 60, in India. And then I started writing years later, in the 60s. In 68 I started writing the French book that you know, Souvenirs de la Fiction Ordinaire. And now I'm preparing to write some other book, also about history. That's all I can say just now. I'll take back this talking sometime later.
Thank you.
I spoke with Sustel yesterday and all that. How I got to Germany, I spoke with her. My sticking up posters and distributing leaflets in Germany, I distributed in all 11,500 leaflets or posters stuck on the walls. I would have been quite left alone. Nobody would have interfered, because I used to do it cleverly, until I met a collaborator. This was in the station of Köln, Colonia, on the 13th of February 1949. A young man, I saw a young man, a very tall, former SS man. He just came out of prison so he was a prisoner of war for the French. And he told me his story. He was a prisoner of war of the French. They sent him to the Congo under Negro supervision, after telling the Negroes that they, the whole lot of them, 18,000 SS men, were all enemies of the race and whatnot, and they could do what they liked to them. There was not a single Frenchman, he told me, in the camp. The head of the camp was a Negro, a French citizen, of course, but that's all. And they had a very hard time. It was a lead mine. They had watered up to the waists and hardly anything to eat, etc. 4,800 out of the 11,000 saw the coast of Europe again. The others all died. So he told me. And that impressed me, of course. I was writing in those days, Gold in the Furnace. I had written 3 chapters. I gave him the 3 chapters and translated them to him. I translated part anyhow, and he liked it. And he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm taking the train to Hameln. I want to see some people in Hameln, and I'm coming back in a week." All right. He said, "I'll take you to the train." So he came to the train with me. I gave him a leaflet on the way. I said, "You go to the WC and read that in the WC for nobody to see you. And tell me what you think of it." He read the leaflet, came out again. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and very cold. He came out and put his 2 hands on my shoulders and said, "Who wrote that?" I said, "I." "You wrote that? But you are not a German." I said, "No, I'm an Aryan still. Without being German, I'm still an Aryan. And I owe allegiance to Germany as the country that tried to save the race from decay and from all the consequences of, well, Judeo-democratic domination." He said, "Give me as many as you like of these leaflets, as many as you can. I'll stick them for you." Leaflets, not posters, they were posters, with a great big swastika like that, 10 centimeters long and 10 centimeters wide. I gave him about 100. And out he went, and my train went, and I came back after 8 days, as I said. I came back, and he had told me, "When you come back, you go to the Catholic mission." There was a Catholic mission and a Protestant mission in every station in Germany in those days. "And you ask the address of Gerhard Wassner," was my name. I'll phone you room. Until then, I'm staying in Köln, so they'll tell you where I live and you can see me. That's exactly what I did 8 days later. On the 20th of February, the night between the 20th and the 21st, it was about midnight, I went to the Catholic mission. I said, "Could you give me please the address of Gerhard Wassner?" As soon as I said that, a policeman that was nearby said to me, "May I see your passport?" I said, "Of course." I showed him my passport. He said, "Come along, leave your things here. Come along, we have something to talk about." I didn't like that idea. I followed him, left my things there, followed him. And he told me, "It's a business of Flugblätter, plakaten and Flugblätter." It is to say posters and tracts, leaflets. So I made myself as innocent looking as I could, and I said, "What are posters and what are leaflets? I don't know what they..." "Oh," he said, "they are papers with propaganda." I said, "I don't know anything about this. What do you mean?" I did not know that Wassner was under arrest already. That I couldn't guess. So he said, "Look here, we are going to show you." And he put one of my posters on the table. He said, "Do you know about that? Has Wassner given you those?" And then I understood, and then only I understood that Wassner was under arrest. How to define the posters. I said, "Yes, but you're making a mistake. Wassner didn't give me any of those. I gave about 100 to Wassner." I said, "Wassner is completely innocent in this affair. He probably didn't know what he was doing. He took them and put them in his pocket. I doubt whether he read them or not, I don't know. But I gave him about 100. He said, "What did you intend to do?" I said, "I intended to stick them up. And of course I have no money to pay him, but I have a few pieces of jewelry. I could have given something with my jewelry." And they said to me, "Who pays you?" I was indignant. I said, what do you mean, who pays me? Nobody pays me. I do this because I love the National Socialist idea.
Okay.
You'll find 9 boxes that were once full of jewelry, and they are now empty. That jewelry I sold bit by bit in order to pay my journey into Germany from Saarland 6 or 7 times. in order to stay in Germany and in order to finance also the printing of my leaflets. He said, they were printed in Germany. I said, no, they were printed abroad. Who printed them and where? I said, I can't tell you that. He said, we have methods to make people like you speak. And I really thought, when they said that, I really thought they had the authorization to do what they liked with me. And as I had heard many horror stories of how my comrades fared in the hands of the German police after the war, I thought my turn had come. And I really was afraid. I really was afraid. I looked at my hands and I said, if they pull at my nails, what will I do? Anyhow, I prayed the heavenly powers to give me strength. And I felt really that I was getting less afraid. And I had the courage to tell them, I said, well, you can do what you like to me, but you cannot, there's one thing you cannot do, and that is to kill the idea which I represent. So you can have me, you can do what you like with me. I didn't tell them I won't speak, because I was not at all sure that I wouldn't say anything on the torture. And I thought that was the little thing that was awaiting me. But as I said these words, you can do what you like, but you cannot kill the idea that I represent. As I was saying these words, something in me told me I have been telling this to different people under different ways for the last several thousands of years. And I felt that my real I, was above my body. My body was something different from myself. I felt that. It was a queer experience. And now that passed away. They said to me, you are under arrest, madam. It was 2:30 in the morning. I said, I'm so glad to be under arrest. This puts me not so quite so far away from my comrades. I'm nearer to them now. I'm very happy. And then a man came. I don't know what he was, but he looked like a Jew. He said, now come along, we'll take you to a cell. And he took me to a cell, downstairs. Must have been 20 or 30 yards or meters in the underground. He opened a dark cell and pushed me in. The inside was full of mud. The clack on my feet. There was one bed, but I couldn't see what was on the bed. I just banged against it, that's how I knew it was one bed. I couldn't see a thing. And he shut the door. And I banged at the door. I said, this is full of mud. Couldn't you give me at least something to sit on? I can't lie down in this, but I can sit at this. Not have my legs all, my feet all muddy. He said, you can take that. He gave me a stinking piece of, I don't know what, bedclothes, I'm going to say, a stinking piece of cloth. I said, you can keep it for yourself. It sticks, I don't want it. I'd rather have the mud. And then a voice came from the darkness and said, a new one? I said, yes, a new one. Oh dear, where did they get you? I said, at the station. What have you been doing? Stealing something? I said, no, I've been distributing leaflets and putting up posters against the occupation. Oh, she said, that is something good. That is something honorable. You won't get out of it very easily. I'll get out of it. I've been stealing the ration card of somebody for my children. I have 6 children. They'll let me off, but they won't let you off. I said, it doesn't matter if they don't. I'm here for that. I'm here to testify to my idea, to our idea. I don't know if it's yours also or not. Anyhow, she said, we were all right under Hitler. I can tell you. Now these swine came and everything is wrong. We have rationing, we have hardly anything to eat. We have 25 grams of fat every month. I mean to say, you are quite right to fight them. I said, I'm glad to hear it from you, a German. She said, would you like to sleep on my bed? I said, no, the bed is too small and I'm not sleepy at all. I said, may I sing? If you are not going to sleep, may I sing? She said, you can sing as much as you like. I'm not sleepy, I've slept all day. I said, all right. I started singing every one of the National Socialist songs I knew. with all my enthusiasm, I was very happy in this place. And in the morning, as it dawned late of course, it was in February, I saw 4 feet at the very, very high window, as though 2 people were listening. I said, they listened from a message from underground. I was actually, in the physical sense, on the ground, as well as in the moral sense. And then they came in, they opened the door. They took out this woman, what was called Hildegard, I don't remember what. And they left me in. And time was passing, and time was passing. I had had nothing to eat all day and all night. And I said, that doesn't matter. When are they going to come? Are they going to leave me here the rest of my life? I was feeling anxious. And at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, what must have been that much, from what? It was dark outdoors anyhow. It was dark. They took me in a car, black car, what they call in English, I think, the Black Maria. And off we went to some place. And the interrogation started. One Mr. Hatch put questions to me, and there were Germans, there was a Nobel inspector and some other Germans, the police. And I wanted to speak German because of the Germans were there. He said, no, your trial will be in English. You are will be tried by a military tribunal under the laws of occupation, the statute of occupation, and you want to speak English only. I said, all right. Put questions to me about name, career, my life history and whatnot. And then he said to me, qui are you? Now that she's French. And we find in your things a certificate of nationality from the Greek consulate of Lyon, dated 1928, stating that you are Greek. How is it? I said, oh, it's just nothing. It's just that I forgot to tell the people that gave me the passport that I was of Greek nationality. The passport was given to me, and they were kind enough to give me a recommendation to the French authorities, the French and Allied authorities. That recommendation was of Mr. Soustel himself, the right hand of Mr. de Gaulle, and I forgot to tell them that I was of Greek nationality. I said that in an ironical manner. And they couldn't help smiling. And then they put me a few questions, and one of the questions was, you certainly have letters. By the way, while I was in that police room, before they told me that I was under arrest, I had a few addresses. I took them out of my bag very slowly on my lap. I tore them in bits, and taking them in my hand, as though I was coughing in front of a pocket handkerchief, I swallowed them. So that was finished. When they asked me, have you have any addresses? I said, no, I have no addresses. You don't know any National Socialists in Germany. You mean to say you know nobody? I said, I know nobody. In fact, I know only 2 National Socialists in the world. He said, 2? I said, yes, 2. And who are these? Can you tell us their names? I said, very gladly. One is the Führer, and one is myself. I don't know any others. Because you see, when they tell you that they are very good Democrats, you have no means of knowing whether they tell the truth or telling lies. And if they tell me I'm a good National Socialist, how am I to know if it's true or not? But of these 2 I'm perfectly sure. That's all I can say. And they said, you said in your leaflet that he's alive, your Führer. Do you believe it? I said, well, in those days I really did. I said, yes, I do. And he said, how did you know it? Did any one of his disciples tell you? I said, no, an Indian astrologer told me. And I believe in astrology because I'm a Mediterranean person, or half of it at least, and we are all superstitious on the Mediterranean shore. And that was that. And then Hatch told me, you are going to pass the night in my place, my house. I said, why? If I were a German, you'd let me in that dark cell. Why don't you let me in that dark cell as I am? I don't want any special treatment. Oh, you are a British subject. An Indian passport. You are a British subject. I said, well, no longer now. But still, he said, you have a British passport dated 1940. The passport is good till 1950. We are in 1949, so therefore you have to come. And I went there.
Just,
The French people that gave me the recommendation. It was not a French passport, it was a British passport from India, given out in India in 1940. And I never could use it, because they gave it to me too late. I had to renew my passport anyhow, and I wanted to come to Europe, I wanted to come to Germany in 1940, and give out war propaganda in Greek and in Bengali. But for that I had to renew my passport. I was now Mrs. Mukherjee, so I went to the Indian authorities, that is to say the British authorities, and asked them for a passport for France. Not for Germany, of course. For France, I would have gone to Germany very easily from France. And they said, all right, we'll give you one. And the passport was dated 30th of April. But they never gave it to me in April. They gave it to me at the end of June, when there were no communications left, and one could not leave India, unless, of course, one was known as an allied friend, and one was going to join the resistance of Mr. de Gaulle or something like that. Then you would have plane facilities. But everybody knew what I was. Nobody gave me any plane facilities. You understand? And when I went to France, when I got this military permit from what is it called, Soustel, they put a stamp on my passport, French born. So, well, I was French born, if you like, since every child born in France is French. But I continue now. So, what did I say now? Wait, I was at Hatches. I saw a beautiful house, well furnished, spacious, and a lovely Scotch woman with red hair, and two lovely children. And that was Hatch's family. And I said, some poor German family has been expelled to make place for them. The German family as beautiful as these people. Some German women looking exactly like Mrs. Hatch, and some German children looking exactly like the little Hatches. I said, isn't it a shame that the people of the same race, looking exactly like each other, have such a fight, such a war, and then expel each other from their homes? I said that, and I said it to Mrs. Hatch. And she said, what do you wish? This is war. What can you expect? We can't do otherwise. Anyhow, she said, would you like to have something to eat? It was about 7 o'clock at night. I said, yes, as long as it's vegetarian. She said, you are a vegetarian by health, for health reasons, or for other reasons? I said, I always was, from my childhood. I always had a repulsion. You call it repulsion?
Yeah,
repulsion. Yes, repulsion at the sight of quarters of meat hanging in front of the butcher shops. I never took any meat, in fact. I love animals, and I don't approve of killing them for food. We can eat other things. And she said, and you don't mind, you love animals, but you don't mind the thousands of people that your comrades killed. I said, why should I mind? Animals are not anti-Nazis. And she was shocked. But I was perfectly sincere. And I would say it again. You see, in those days, I used to believe in all these atrocity tales. But it didn't shock me. And they didn't shock me, I repeat it, for this very reason, that I thought to myself that as long as people tolerate all these atrocities on animals, there's no reason why any country should not commit atrocities on its own enemies. Enemies are not as lovable as animals. They're not lovable at all, in fact, and animals are. And that was that. Anyhow, the woman was shocked. Anyhow, she said to me, what would you like to eat? I have an omelette. I said, you can give me an omelette if you like. An omelette with perhaps something in it, onions or whatever you like to put in it, but absolutely no meat. All right. She gave me an omelette, I enjoyed it, and then started the interrogation. Hatch was present again. He brought a typewriter and a typist, and the same old interrogation, same old questions. And what prompted you to be a National Socialist? What made you a national? I said, I always was one. I became conscious of it once, long ago, 1929, but I always was one, in fact. And he said, what do you like in it? I said, the idea of perfection. The idea that man should be perfect. It is the perfect type of each race. Every race should strive to its own perfect type. In fact, National Socialism is an Aryan racialism, but you could transpose it. I can very well imagine a non-Aryan, say a Japanese, having the same ideas as ours. In fact, I said, in 1940, I met a Japanese in India, one of the members of the Japanese consulate. And he told me, he said, your National Socialism, we consider it, we Japanese, as Western brand Shinto. It's the same spirit as our Shinto religion. That is to say, cult of the sun, cult of heroes, and cult of ancestry. It's nothing else. I said, yes, you are right. And recently, that is to say 78, I had a letter from some Japanese, the teacher in Nara, and he told me, point blank, we Japanese are all National Socialists in our own way. We are not Aryan racialists, of course, we are not Aryans, but we believe in blood and soil. What more? But this can be said of any race in the world, any conscious race. And that's why, if to be a religion, one has to, say, the basic principles of a doctrine have to be universal. I can say National Socialism is a universal. In fact, higher animals are racialists, and lower animals too. They won't mate with anyone except people of their, creatures of their own race. Certain spiders will go, miles and miles to get the female spider of the same kind as themselves. They have that instinct. The highest of the beings on earth have that instinct, and the lowest. And the intermediate ones haven't got it. An average dog, especially what they call in India a pariah dog, will mate with any bitch. Spiders don't, insects don't, plants don't, minerals don't. There are strict laws of combination between minerals in the chemistry. And higher human beings don't. The intermediate human being is just like the dog, eats with anybody. We want to be the highest. National Socialism is for teaching the Aryans to become real Aryans, that is to say, the top of their race, and to be able to guide the others and bring the whole race up. We don't want any kind of, people in our Aryan race that behave like dogs, like pariah dogs. That's what we want. He said, all right. And have you any samples of this in the world? This is not the voice of the majority. I said, not now. Not now, since Christianity and since some other international religions have brainwashed the world. But it was so in antiquity. I said, it was so in antiquity. He said it was so among the Jews. I said, not so much among the Jews as among other people. The Jews were racialists, provided the people of their own race had the same religion as themselves. They were of the same race as the Moabites and as the Ammonites. But these two didn't worship Yahweh, they worshipped the Moabites worshipped Chemosh, and the other ones worshipped Milcom. They were other gods. Therefore the Jews hated them. But among the races of the world in general, this was admitted. This was admitted. Religion didn't count. Religion was a matter of personal affairs. They used to worship each other's gods. The Jews themselves were always worshipping the gods of the Canaanites. The Bible is full of the infidelities to Yahweh. They don't think twice about it. They don't think twice about sacrificing to other gods. It was the fashion. Nobody cared for this religious fanaticism. And Adolf Hitler says that himself on the page 507 of his Mein Kampf. edition of 1935. In the world of antiquity that was much freer than ours, there was no such thing as religious intolerance. Religious intolerance, religious terror entered the world with Christianity. And he's perfectly right. Perfectly right. So that's what I said to them. And they said, well, what is your model state in antiquity? I said, Sparta. Well, they said, we like Sparta too, but we don't like National Socialism. I said, what you're talking now is really a contradiction. You can't really like Sparta and the Spartan way if you are against National Socialism. It was nothing else. It was nothing else. They said, but it was awful. You see, what they did in Sparta was awful. They used to put babies that were not fit to be either warriors or mothers of warriors that were badly formed or not weighing enough. They used to just kill them on the spot, throw them into a depth, the Chiadis. I said, yes. My mother always told me that I would have been in the Chiadis myself because I only weighed 900 grams at the birth. But it wouldn't make any difference to the world, of course. But why do you criticize the Spartans for doing that under command of the state when in all Greece they did worse just for the whims of the father? The father didn't want another girl, that means nothing to say another dowry to give at the time of marriage. And he said, well, if the next baby is a girl, you just expose her. And they put her in an earthen pot on the street corner, and she was left there either to be taken by the first kind-hearted person who wanted her, or else to die. It was done in all over the ancient world. Why did you criticize Sparta only? And there was a discussion like that between this Mr. Hatch and another gentleman who came, and myself. It was very interesting. I was delighted to talk of antiquity. It was one of my subjects. And in the end, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I was asked, told I could go to sleep. The next day, I was taken from Köln to Düsseldorf, I think. And all along the way, I think it was Düsseldorf. Yes, and all along the way, along the Autobahn, I couldn't help saying, you see these beautiful Autobahns, this is the work of Adolf Hitler. You use them. You can't help admitting that these are things that he did. And they answered, the occupation people answered me, yes, all right. And Germany was easier to invade with these Autobahns. So I'm sorry for that anyhow. They took me, I think I had another interrogatory, I'm not quite sure. Anyhow, I landed in Verne. The very same day I was taken to Verne. And I told them, I said, I'm very glad to be in Verne, where there are people of my own faith, quite a number of them. There were in fact 26 people, 26 women in the women's department, in the D wing, and about 800 or 1,000 men in the men's department. There had been 11,000 men in 1935-45, especially SS men. I was taken to the women's department and put in a cell, on remand. And you see, I wasn't condemned yet. My trial lasted 6 weeks. I was only condemned on the 5th of April, 49, not before. Before, I enjoyed certain privileges that people on remand have. I wasn't forced to work, for one, and I had quite a number of visits. On the 23rd, the next day, 23rd of February, which happens to be the anniversary of Horst Wessel's murder. He was murdered on the 23rd of February 1930. That meant exactly 19 years after his murder. My cell opened in the morning, and in came the head of the infirmary and a beautiful looking woman, a blonde of about my age. In fact, just 6 months older than I. And I was introduced, this is Hertha Ehlert. Hertha Ehlert of the Belsen camp. She was a wardress at the Belsen camp. And she said, in several other camps before. All right. And she said, you see, I'm a war criminal. And when she said that, I put my arms around her and said, kissed her face, and told her, in my eyes, there are no war criminals, there are only victims of democracy, and you are one. And she said, I'm glad to hear that. Tell me, you that are a foreigner, they tell us all day long that we were monsters because we did this and that and the rest to the Jews. We persecuted the Jews, and it was wrong. I said, those who tell you that, just ask them whether they belong to the Indian sect of the Jains or not. She said, what's that? I said, there's a sect in India called the Jains. They don't kill anything. Not bugs, not fleas, not lice, nothing. It is the custom and it is the religion. If a Jain tells me we were wrong to get rid of our enemies, people that were threatening the existence of the Aryan race, and especially the existence of Germany, I would say, well, if you are Jains, all right. But the people who are trying to brainwash you are not Jains. They kill bugs, and they kill fleas, and they kill flies, and they kill I don't know what else. So they have no right to tell us that we should kill enemies of our country and our race. A fly cannot do half the harm that an intelligent Jew can do. Certainly not. So if you can kill the fly, or if you can kill the bug, or if you can kill a louse, why can't you get rid of the intelligent Jew that is harming you, or that risks to harm you? Even the potential enemy. You kill a bug, the bug has perhaps not bitten you, but he might bite you. On that principle, you go and take his life. Well, if we did things like that to the Jews, we did it on the same principle. And the principle is admitted by everybody, except the Jains. She was quite taken back. She was delighted. She said, I'm going to tell that to all the Devi. I said, you can tell it to who you like. I'll tell it to the authorities if they come and ask me tomorrow. I don't mind. It's logic. I am all for logic. I don't believe in things that are half one way and half the other. I have no time for the enemies of the Reich. None at all. Because the Reich represents to me the force that was doing its best to stem decay in the whole world. And therefore, anything done in the name of the Reich, well, I told my mother so many times, I said, my mother was on the other side. I told her so many times, and I wrote it in letters. I feel myself personally responsible for whatever has been done in the name of the Third Reich, or whatever shall be done in the future, if ever we get power again. And, well, in parentheses, the answer of my mother to that was the burning of my doctorate thesis. I had left 500 of my doctorate thesis in her keep, and she burnt them all. She burnt them all in 1946 when I saw her again, and she told me they were burnt, all except 12, 6 of each thesis. She told me, well, I could have burnt my own things. Of course, I had heaps of ordinary books, I had heaps of papers, I had heaps of things. But as you feel responsible for all that was done in the name of the Third Reich, I burnt your things. Because of your Third Reich, I was called in 1942. So I burnt your things. I said, that's logic. I didn't blame her for that. I'd much rather have her attitude than the attitude of these stupid people that will tell me, oh, you say so, but you don't really believe it. You can't really believe it. You wouldn't really do it. Those fools I don't like. I prefer the one who takes steps against me on logical grounds. And we had a talk. And then I said, what are you getting to eat? And she said, oh, something that's just fit to eat for pigs. I said, you know, I have British vervlegen, British food, because I have a British passport. So already this morning, I had 12 slices of bread. I don't need 12 slices of bread. I take one in the morning, one at midday, and one in the evening. And that's all. You can have the rest. So every day, I said, you can have my coffee too. I take 1 cup, and I have a liter. Now, I have no meat, because I told them I was a vegetarian already, and they give me boiled vegetables at midday. I have boiled vegetables and nothing else, not even butter. But in the evening, I get something nice. I get some macaroni, or I get something nice, and I can eat that. There's generally very little of it, just enough for myself. But whatever I have in the morning, you come every morning, and you take it. For the D-Wing people, for the camarades. She was very pleased. And every morning she came, all the time I was in there. She had 10 slices of bread. She had all my coffee except a cup for myself. And on Sundays I had a little bit of chocolate, I had some marmalade and some butter. She had my chocolate, she had my marmalade, and she had my butter. I was very glad to give them to the camarades. But that, in course of time, brought me into trouble. That is to say, there's a loophole on every cell. Now, the women condemned to hard labor, used to scrub the floor, could see through that loophole. And they could see me write after the time that was allotted to our work. And they went and reported me that she writes. I was not allowed to write. I was allowed only to do some sewing work for the prison. The director, Colonel Vickers, told me that I am not to write. But the Oberwachtmeister, the woman in charge of the work, told me I could write, provided I don't say that I'm doing it. I used to write after the time of work. That was after my condemnation, after the 5th of April, after I was no longer in on remand. And that brought on me the jealousy of these women that saw me in the morning, or suspected me in the morning of giving my white bread to the D-Wing women. By the way, I had entreated the direction of the prison to put me in the D-Wing. And they said, no, you're just staying in the B-Wing. Is to say, with the women that are condemned for abortion, for murder, for theft, for breaking in a house, what do you call them? Robbers, things like that. Mostly they were condemned for abortion. So I said, why don't you put me in the D-Wing? I'm a political prisoner, I'm not a prisoner. He said, I have not done anything. He said, yes, we put you in the D-Wing, and the next day the whole D-Wing will be singing the hospital song. You are a firebrand. We don't want to put you in the D-Wing. You'll have to stay here. I didn't like it at all. I'll never forgive the authorities of keeping me purposely among the abortionists and the thieves and these people. And I said to myself, thank goodness. I was not forced to work in a workshop with the others. I was all alone. I blessed them for being alone. Rather alone than with these people. But I resented not being in the D-Wing and having to go around the courtyard for a quarter of an hour every day with these people. I met all sorts of types among these people. But that talk was boring. The talk was men and food, nothing else. And their experiences in prison. Most of them had been in the German concentration camps before the war, for the same offenses, for theft, for breaking in houses, things like that. The same offenses. One had been in different camps 18 times and was condemned by the Allies for the 19th time. These kind of people. Putting me with these kind of people, I'll never forget that. Anyhow, to come back to my trial, after the things I'm going to tell afterwards, to come back to my trial, it took place on the 5th of April, 49. It was an ordinary military tribunal trial, occupation trial. The people judging me were military occupation. And there was an attorney general who spoke. And he said, that I was guilty than anybody else because of my diplomas, my doctorate, my MA, my MSc, whatnot. And because I knew what I was doing. And he showed the ruins of Düsseldorf, we were in Düsseldorf, in Mühlenstraße. And he said, these ruins were brought about by National Socialism. I said, no, they weren't. They were brought about by Allied bombers against National Socialism. He said, you keep quiet. You talk when you are told to talk. And then they gave me a lawyer. I didn't want one. I said, I can defend myself. I don't want a lawyer. They gave me one all the same. It was the rule. And the lawyer got a letter from Mr. Mukherjee trying to make out that I was not a political person at all. I was much too simple to be a political person. That I liked National Socialism as a philosophy and as a religion perhaps, but that I really had no political meaning. And I said, the lawyer said, I will use that letter, and by using that letter I can get you off several months. I said, I don't want you to use that letter. You please don't use it, because it's not quite accurate. It tries to defend me, and I don't want to be defended. Whatever I have to say, I'll say when they give me the right to speak. But I'm not going to be, I don't want my action to be made smaller, less important, on any account. He said, all right. At the end, the room was packed, and there were a double row of Jews all around the first rows. And they were grinning and they were laughing, they were looking quite pleased. At the end, they told me that I could speak for a quarter of an hour or half an hour. So I spoke. And they asked me, why did you do this? Why did you stick up these posters? I said, I didn't stick up these posters and distribute these leaflets with the hope that by doing so, I would resurrect National Socialism and make it the ruling force in Germany and this world. Certainly not. That job is much too great for a single individual. It's the job of the gods. They'll do it in time if it's their sweet pleasure. Personally, I did it for 3 reasons. First, I obeyed my conscience. Didn't you tell them in Nuremberg, didn't you tell the world in Nuremberg that a man has to follow his conscience? Of course, you said the world conscience. My conscience is not the world conscience, it's a private conscience. But I follow that. I don't know what the world conscience is. According to me, it doesn't exist. So I followed my conscience. It told me to do this, and I did it. Second, I wanted to show the German people at the time of humiliation and martyrdom that at least there were some individuals on the surface of the earth that were still for them. And third, I wanted to defy not only you, the occupation powers, but all those that were against us. I wanted to show them that the easy task, that is to say, drowning a whole continent in fire and phosphorus, killing millions of people, 5 million civilians were killed in Germany alone. That it was an easy task, and they did it. It was so easy, with ample Jewish money and technique put in service of a cause that was theirs. But the difficult task they couldn't do and cannot do. This is a very difficult task being to denazify, as they say, one person. Not many, one. And not a man at that, nothing but a woman. And not a German woman at that, but a woman from the other end of the earth. They cannot do that. They could kill me if they liked. They didn't do it well. It's their affair. But they could. They can't denazify me. And that's what I want to show. They can neither denazify me, nor can they denazify the natural forces. The principles of National Socialism, based on cosmic laws, will still be true wherever they are, we are in the universe, on this planet or on other planets, whatever they do. And that's what I wanted to say, that's all. And I started quoting something from Mein Kampf. and the judge stopped me. The quotation was, what we want to, the only thing that should prompt our action is neither the approval nor the reprobation of the people around us, but only our allegiance to the truth in which we believe. I didn't say it in whole, I said a part of it only. The judge interrupted me, he said, I don't want to know what your Führer wrote. I said, I'm sorry, because it's because he wrote things like that I'm here. I acted according to his writings. Anyhow, I went to the trial was over. He said 3 years. 3 years rigorous imprisonment. I thought to myself, these people don't really love the blessed democracy. Because if I had been caught in the Russian zone, it would not be 3 years rigorous imprisonment. It would have been 30 years in a Siberian camp. And I would be dead by now, long ago. But the communists have a faith, a false one, but a faith. And they can understand people who have a different faith. And they can understand them, and they know that any person who has a faith is dangerous, potentially at least, to all those who hate that faith. These people don't feel the same. Their first concern is their bread and butter and their enjoyment. Democracy gives them that, all right, long live democracy. If we gave them that, if we came to power tomorrow and gave them the same thing, let's say, Heil Hitler, so many did in Germany before the catastrophe. So many did of that description. And they say the contrary now. Those are the Democrats. Those are the Western anti-communists. And they will be crushed by the communists, because the communists have a faith and they have none. Unless we crush the communists. We are the only ones. We have seen that in Vietnam. Anyhow, that was long after these happenings. I went out. I had taken with me my swastika earrings, brought in India, great big filigrane earrings of gold. As soon as the sentence was given, and I feared no more, there was no talk to be a future, say, a continual next trial because of my earrings, I put them on. I stood up, I did the Hitler salute, looking at the people, and I walked off. Some people of the press wanted to interview me, but the authorities didn't allow it. One thing I can say, the 2 rows of Jews that were at the first places, they were not laughing any longer. I don't suppose I frightened them. I was not such a powerful person, but they felt the spirit. They felt this can always begin again. As long as there are people who really are given to it, it can begin again. That's what they seem to think. They didn't tell me so. I don't know what they thought. I can't read people's thoughts. But that's what it seemed to me. I walked off. And I was taken to hell after that. That was my trial in Düsseldorf, Müllerstrasse, on the 5th of April, 1949. Exactly 2 years after my watch of fire on the flanks of the burning Hitler in Iceland. Exactly 2 years. And now, what do you want to know?
Okay.
Well, I already knew Mr. Jordan and Mr. Tyndall and the other members of the NSM. NSM existed since 1961 or 62. Even before, I think it might have existed, but I was in England in 61 for Easter holidays. And it was not yet the NSM, there was some other organization headed by Mr. Fontaine. And Jordan, I don't know whether he was in it or not. Anyhow, Jordan came to prominence after his great speech in Trafalgar Square in July. I think it might have been 61. Yes, it was 61. July 61. And the foundation of the NSM and the growth of it. And then I met Françoise Dior in 62. Jordan was in correspondence with me, and he gave me her address and asked me to meet her. And then in 62 I came over to England again. This was in July, as far as I remember. I put up in London at my friend's, Miss Gantry, perfectly apolitical woman, very pleasant, very understandable. She never spoke a word against us. She's perfectly apolitical. Is sympathetic, I would say. And I put up with her. And she told me, look here, you came to go to the Cotswold camp. I know you have an international Hitler camp, and you want to go. If I were you, I would not go, because look what's in the papers. She showed me a newspaper, and the paper said, this camp, any foreigner that goes to it will not set foot in England again. She said, isn't it a pity? You have so many friends here. You want to see them again. You want to be in touch with them. Look at the risk you are taking. With my natural spirit of defiance, I answered, it doesn't matter. I'll take the risk. I'm always ready to take a risk for these kind of things. And I went. We had an interview, we had a meeting at the NSL in Holland Park, and we went to the station in separate groups. We were to meet somewhere else. We were to meet at, what was the place? Cheltenham. And from Cheltenham, the car was to take us to the camp. All right, we travelled all night, and we met at Cheltenham. All night, and I don't remember. Yes, we went at night. We were in Cheltenham part of the day, and at night again, we went to a place without knowing, I didn't know where we were going. I could have found the camp again. We landed in the camp. There were tents, and we occupied each one a tent, or sometimes two or three in the same tent. I was sharing my tent with a Belgian lady whose son was in the movement. Her son was with some boys. And I remember the awakening the next morning. It was Tyndall's voice coming from a tent, and they were speaking of I don't remember who. He said, what? They're in bed still? Kick them out. Fancy staying in bed all this time till 8 o'clock, like bloody Democrats. When I heard that, I thought to myself, but I'm in bed still. I must get up quick, quick, quick. So I got up, and I went to the river as soon as I possibly could. I got there, but it was practically, there was actually nobody there. And I started bathing in the river. It was freezing cold water. I didn't want to be called a bloody Democrat, or acting like one. And I said to myself, oh, they came and offered me hot water, tepid water. I said, no thank you, I'll bathe in cold. So I bathed in the freezing cold water, which was in summer, of course. I don't know if I would have done it in winter, but in summer it was quite all right. And I came out and I went up and we had breakfast. We had tea. I didn't like tea myself, but I took tea all the same. There was nothing else, there was no coffee. And the camp started. Contacts with different people. There were Swedes, there were Germans, of course, good majority of Germans. There were one or two Italians, one or two Frenchmen, some Belgians, and one or two Americans. One or two Americans, one named Harry May. This Harry May had a swastika brassard on his right arm. He was the only one to wear one. And he showed himself extremely sympathetic and ran after me, was always to talk to me. There were others too, but I didn't want to talk always to Harry May, but he really wanted to talk to me. I thought he was all right. I thought he was, I didn't know. Anyhow, it went to first day, second day, third day. And one day, there was a surprise waiting for us. They told us there was a surprise. They said, be ready, sit on your benches and you're going to have a surprise. Of course, I was surprised before that to see that Tyndall had vanished. And Jordan was not there. So I was wondering why. And they said to us, they'll come later. Actually, on that day, it was the 4th of August, or was the 3rd, I don't remember. It was very short after the beginning of the camp. There was a horse whistle lead played. There were lights all over the place. It was in the forest. And suddenly coming up from the river, I saw Rockwell. Tyndall one side of him, Jordan the other side of him. And we all stood up, we stretched out our arms, and the horse whistle lead was played. And we were so pleased to see Rockwell. It was written in all the papers, this man shall not come to England. He was absolutely unwanted by the government, by the system. And then the next day we saw in the papers, this man is in England. And he was here. He gave us a speech on that very night. A speech that lasted practically, well, not all night, but with the questions it practically lasted all night. It was the first time I saw Rockwell. I was really thrilled. He was a great personality. But from what he told us on that very night, I felt, poor Rockwell, I wouldn't like to be in his place. Why? Because he became conscious of the value and truth of National Socialism after the war. And after he had fought the war so well on the American side as to get reward, decorations and whatnot, he was a very good soldier. And I wouldn't have liked to be in his place. Have fought National Socialism all these years. And then when the war is finished, and when the other side has won, to find out that it was the truth. Find out that he has fought the truth, fought against the truth. Really, I wouldn't like to be in his place. I'd rather be a little nobody, which I am. But I liked him for his sincerity and for his courage. It needs courage to say, I was wrong. And especially when one has such a great reputation as he had, decorations and whatnot. He could have kept quiet. He did not keep quiet because he knew that the truth was the truth and one has to stick up for it. And he told us all about his own history. It was after the way he had seen the reaction of the average American to MacArthur and to his policy that he had made an inquiry and found that National Socialism was right. And then he founded and organized this American Nazi Party, which is called today National Socialist White People's Party, NSWPP. It's not the only movement in America, but it is one of the movements, the main movement. There are 2 or 3 other little small groups. At the time, I had been in touch with several of the members of the National Socialist Party of America. Among others, one Dan Burris. I had been in correspondence with him from India. He used to write enthusiastic letters. And suddenly he stopped. So I asked Rockwell, what happened to Dan Burris? And the answer of Rockwell struck me and made me admire Rockwell all the more. He said, I kicked him out, that one. I said, why did you kick him out? What has he done? Well, I caught him half strangling a poor dog. And I don't want cowards in the National Socialist movement. To hurt an animal is to be a coward. and especially a faithful, trusting dog. So I kicked him out. That, I thought to myself, that is something that the Führer himself could have done. I don't know whether he ever did it. He had the opportunity of doing it, but he could have done that. And it was the first time that I ever heard of a political party leader, a man that depends on public opinion to have a following, kick a man out of his party because that man has shown cruelty to an animal. I found that very good. I said, bravo, Rockwell, you did the right thing, if that's the fact that you did the right thing. And I was to find out more about that famous Donbass a few years later, in Montbrison, where I was working in France as a stopgap teacher. There was a newspaper on the table one morning I saw, when I came down to get my morning coffee. And in that paper there was a few lines. A man called Donbass has been found dead in New York, in his room. He killed himself. And it is presumed that he killed himself, committed suicide, after an article had been printed in the New York papers saying that he, although a member of the National Socialist Party, was in reality a Jew. So I was fixed on Donbass. That's all. So, now more about Rockwell. I read his book, Tomorrow the World, his biography. There were passages in it that I liked very much. And there were passages I didn't like so much. The passages I didn't like so much were those about his wives, his children, well, he could have mentioned the whole lot in a few lines. I didn't see the necessity of talking so long about his private attachment to his first wife, and then why he separated from her, and then his second one. It was a beautiful Icelandic girl. All right. In fact, the beautiful Icelandic girl left him when she gave him to choose between the movement and herself, and he chose the movement. Good for him. But why? Why not stick to him all the same, in spite of all the inconveniences? I find that not very good for a Nordic woman. Leave him for that. She's left him, and the children are with her in Iceland. Anyhow, that's the only thing I would say that was not absolutely within my expectations of his book. The book, in fact, is quite all right. Very good book. And I went on in Cotswolds. I met, of course, Tyndall. I saw the birth of the WUNS, the WUNS, founded by Rockwell. Rockwell was the first head of it, and by Tyndall, and by Jordan, and by all the heads of the parties that were there. Of course, I joined it. And then I went to London, sent by the others, to pick up some American comrades. An American comrade and his wife. And I found them at the airport, and they went to their hotel, and it was said that we'll go next morning to the camp. I knew how to go to the camp by now. But next morning they showed me the papers. The camp has been broken up. Oh, I said, dear me, the camp has been broken up, for what to do? He said, there's no good going. You don't go yourself, you'll only be getting yourself into trouble. I said, but I've left my things there. I've left my suitcase and all my things. I must collect that. So I went, in spite of all, I went back to the camp. The camp was in a turmoil, but my things were there. I said, all right, I'm going to collect them. But, to my astonishment, the police was there also. And the police took the passports of everyone. And I asked Jordan, I said, should I give my passport? He said, well, I can't tell you to withdraw giving it will not give it, because you have a foreign passport. Yes, of course, I had a Greek passport. Not an Indian one any longer, because India didn't want to renew it. But I had to have a passport, so I took a Greek one. I took my old Greek one back again. The police saw it, put some stamp on it, that I was not to come back to England again. And from that day, I tried 4 times to land in England again, and I was repelled every time. I was sent back. I tried by plane, I tried by boat, I tried every way. I was sent back. And it was all the more vexing because I was publishing a book in England at that time. Long Whiskers and the Two-Legged Goddess, a book about cats, but not only about cats. The undertitle of it is The True Story of a Most Objectionable Nazi and Half a Dozen Cats. There's 9 pictures, 9 beautiful cat pictures in it. It exists, but of course I would have liked to have 1,500 copies. I was never given sent more than 270 copies. I distributed a few. I had another 100, perhaps 150 in France, with my other books. When I left India, I had to leave them somewhere. I couldn't take all that by plane. And the friend in whose house I left it died. Her husband died also, and her 2 daughters just burnt the lot. Not only those books, but other books of mine, and the last of my doctorate thesis, and some books that I valued very much, because the people who had given them to me are now dead. One of these books was a book that was presented to me by Frau Himmler, Himmler's widow. It's burnt. And other books. They only gave me 1 or 2 books, Universal History and Asiatic Mythology, 1 or 2 books that a friend of mine collected and sent over to me. And he was told, we burnt the whole lot. They were either non-interesting or even horrible books. That's what I was told. Horrible books. So, now let's talk of something else. Let's talk of Harry May. Harry May disappeared. He disappeared. Nobody knew what he was. He stayed 1 day or 2. And I went and asked Rockwell. I said, what's happened to this man? Harry May. What's his name? Harry May. Oh, he said, give me Harry May, that communist. I said, how did he come here? I said, why did he come here? Why did he wear a swastika on his arm? He said, well, he came to see. And he vanished. I heard of him again. He wrote to me a letter from USA at my address. I had given him my address in all confidence. I never wrote again, naturally. And I was told that he had been very glad to see me, but that of course his ideas were not those of the end set. But I couldn't understand that his ideas were different, since Rockwell himself told me he was on the other side. And I regretted very much that I gave him gold in the furnace. No, I didn't give him lightning and the sun. And I saw that the copy I had given, he had underlined so many things, he had taken notes and this and that, so thoroughly. I could hardly understand why. I said, my book is not so important as to underline all these things. Apparently, he considered it worth underlining. And he sent me a nasty book of Wilhelm Reich, a dirty Jew that writes about sex. I never was interested in sex. It's a chapter that has no place in my life at all. Why did he send me that dirty book? I don't know. Of course, the dirty book I threw away. I didn't even take the trouble of wasting my eyesight to read it. And that was that. But why did he send it to me? That made me even more, well, how can I say, even more suspicious, and I found it, well, there was one good thing in the fact of him sending me that book. It meant that he lacked complete psychology. Because I'm the last person to send such a book to. Therefore he did not have any knowledge of what I am. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. It means a communist without any psychology is not such a dangerous communist as one with psychology. Naturally. Now let us talk about Jordan and Tinder. I liked them very much, both of them. And my great regret is that they are not together still. I liked them very much. And Jordan introduced me to Françoise Dior, former Countess of Caumont-la-Force. Her first husband was a member of one of the oldest French families, nobleman. And she had by him a daughter that must be now 20. She was born on the 4th of November, I think 20 years ago. Now Françoise Dior was born in 1932, on the 7th of April. And she grew up, that is to say, under the German occupation. And she has some very nice memories from that. She must have been beautiful as a child. She is a beautiful woman today, but she must have been very beautiful also as a child. And she remembers, one of her sweetest remembrances she showed me, was the caress on her blonde hair of an SS man's hand, saying, "What a beautiful little Aryan girl." She was about 8 or 10. She remembers that. And of course, that didn't impress her, that didn't over-impress her, that she didn't link this with any ideology at the time. And her great love was French nobility, old France, France before the revolution of 1789. And I quite understand her. Personally, I always was against the French Revolution of 1789. I too was a royalist when I was 8 years old, 9 years old. Different kind of royalist, but I mean, a royalist in favor of the King of Greece, but it was the same thing. I was a royalist to begin. And so was she. And her dream was to marry into French nobility because it was nobility. She believed in nobility. Until she had great disappointments with it. She married a man that was not, well, what we would call the model. Private life was anything but the model of an Aryan, and of an Aryan of noble family on the top of that. She put up with him for some time, and then she had to divorce. She took the child, she divorced. And slowly, it dawned onto her that real nobility was not a title, but real nobility was a nobility of blood. If you have the blood and the title, all right, but in that case, your title must give you the feeling that you have to live up to it. You can't have any sort of private life with a title. But she was already, I would say, she was already in that milieu, in that movement. I've not met her for quite a number of years now. 7 years, more than 7 years. And I only know of her evolution through very rare letters. I am faulty. I should have answered her last letter, and owing to many reasons, owing to, first of all, to the fact that writing is difficult for me with my poor eyes. I have not yet replied. I'm going to reply for the winter solstice. She's interested in occult things, and she would like to have an occult background, that is to say, a background of experience of, I wouldn't say yoga, but the equivalent of it, to strengthen not her belief in National Socialism, but her efficiency in supporting it. Of course, if one has yogic powers, if one has developed yogic powers, one is stronger. But I don't know exactly what way she's following. She told me she was following a way that was difficult but quick. I don't know enough about what she's doing, what she's following. If she has, who is he? Who is the man or the person who is helping her? To give an opinion, I'd have to know all that, and I don't know a word about it. The only thing I can say is that she did a few rash things in Paris and had herself put to jail. She put up with jail very bravely. She was again in jail in England, accused of having ordered two members of the NSN of having set fire to a synagogue, which was not the case. She never gave any such order. And she was asked in her trial, why did you give that order? And she said she didn't give it. And she was asked, do you approve of setting fire to synagogues? If she had answered, I don't approve of it at all, she would have got away with it. Or she would have had perhaps a month imprisonment. She had in fact something like 2 years. And she had these 2 years for the boldness of her answer. I had given her a piece of information. I had told her that, and I think the page 84 also, maybe before that, of Hans Grimm, Warum, Woher, aber wohin, that book of Hans Grimm. It is said that the Führer himself did not approve of the pogrom of the night of the 9th of November 1938. It was organized, well, linked, it was rather supported by Goebbels on his own account, without the knowledge of the Führer at all. It was a movement whose real root was the indignation of the German people, because two, at least, prominent Germans, Gustav and von Rath, were killed by two Jews, the last one being the famous Greenspan. And it was a reaction to that. Well, just as there was a reaction in 1905 in my own native town in Lyon in France, because the President of the Republic, Mr. Carnot, happened to be killed there by an Italian. The Italian quarter was wrecked and ruined. People even hurt, means they tortured Italian pigs belonging to Italians, that is to say. Well, stupid thing to do and an awful thing to do. They were not the cause of that thing. The same thing, minus torture to animals. The same thing happened in Germany. People were indignant. But the Führer did not approve of it. He told Goebbels the next day, you have set my work back for years and perhaps broken it entirely with your stupid nonsense. Stupid nonsense, why? Because this will give a bad name to Germany in foreign land. And we don't need that bad name now. We need to go forth without any complications. Why do you create trouble? So, that's what the Führer said. I told Françoise that was that. And she remembered it. And she remembered the quotation of Hans Grimm also, the page of the book. And she replied to the judge in front of everybody. Well, I cannot approve of the burning of synagogues and such kind of things, because the Führer did not. And I cannot approve of anything which he does not approve of. And I know he did not approve of it because it's written in Hans Grimm's German book, Warum, Woher, aber wohin, page so-and-so. She got that information from me. In fact, I myself, in Germany, was asked in 1955, I was asked what I think about that pogrom. And I told them, well, I used to approve of it. until last year, 1954. I said, what? They said, no, you, 1954 you got better knowledge, better sense, and now you understand that it's wrong. I said, not at all. In 1954, the book of Hans Green, Warum, Woher, Wohin, appeared, and I read it. And in that book I saw that the Führer did not approve of it. Therefore, I cannot approve of a thing that he disapproves of. That's the only reason why I don't approve of it. Because in the time, in 1938, I was in North Bengal at Jalpaiguri, preaching for the Hindu mission, that is to say, preaching in the name of the Hindu mission that I was working for, against all ideologies of equality, communism, well, any religion of equality, any religion that accepts equality and mixture of races, and communism. And when I heard of the pogrom, well, I said, all right, good for them. They did some damage to some Jewish shops, and what for that? Doesn't make any difference. But now I know the Führer was against it, I'm naturally against it. That answer, and you say, angered the people I was talking to in Germany, people that were not National Socialists, more than if I had said, I approve of it, even more. So I can understand the reaction of the judge in François Dior's case. He gave her 2 years, and she put up with it, and she scrubbed the floor in the prison. She was made to do the most heavy work, and she did it joyfully. People, insulted her, people had made her have a very bad time, and she said, I don't mind at all, I'm doing this for my Führer. And I like that. I told her, Françoise, I'm proud of you, when she told me about her imprisoning. Now, I cannot say more about her, because I have not been in touch with her for many years. But she was sincere, she is sincere, I think. And even if she does not always understand all the implications of National Socialism, well, who does? It's no business of mine. My business is to try to be a good National Socialist myself, and not to criticize anybody. About the dealings, between François Dior, Jordan and Tyndall, it's better to ask Tyndall himself, or Colin Jordan. It's no business of mine at all. And I only regret that whatever happened might have contributed to the breaking up of the NSM. And I deplore that very, very greatly. But I think that if the people in the NSM had been a little more attached to the ideology, whatever may happen on the private, in the private sector, could not influence their attitude, and they could have stayed together all the same. There was no business, there was no reason of falling apart between Jordan and Tyndall. I would have stayed apart, stayed together. Now, Tyndall is now heading the National Front in Britain. I'm very glad of that. I'm very glad the National Front is against entry of more and more and more, either complete non-Aryans or mongrels. I don't know whether it's true. Colin Jordan wrote to me lately. I did not answer his letter. I don't know how far it's true. Telling me that Tyndall accepts membership of Jews into the National Front, if they are English Jews, of course. I don't know whether that's true or not, and therefore I'm not repeating it. I'm just saying that Jordan wrote to me to tell me that. I did not reply to it. I don't know what to say. I'm not on the spot, and I don't wish to judge. I hope it's not true. I hope it's a mistake. I hope it's a mistake. It's a misinformation, and not any gesture of Jordan purposely directed against Tyndall. I hope that the differences, the falling apart is a thing of the past completely. Now, whatever it is, anything that can contribute to the stopping of the inrush of non-Aryans into England and they're settling there, and they're marrying there, and they're mixing with English people. Anything like that is very good. Anything like that is very good. But they should have thought of it long before. This, what I consider, this invasion of England by non-Aryans, and this awful damage to the Aryan race in England, is in reality, in my eyes, a sort of divine punishment for England raising her hand against Adolf Hitler. That's what a country gets when it turns against Adolf Hitler and against his people. Unfortunately, his own people are having the same trouble with the Gastarbeiter. I wouldn't mind so much if the Gastarbeiter in Germany were only North Italians, say. Lombards are Aryans. Or if they were real good Greeks. Well, all Greeks are not real good. Some Greeks are mixed, like some Italians are mixed. Southern Europeans, in most countries of Southern Europe, you get people that are not perfectly worthy of marrying Northern Europeans, Aryans. But you have a number of Turks among the Gastarbeiter. And that's the trouble. Turks and what not. I mean, say, anything you can imagine. Anything you can imagine. I wouldn't be astonished if you have not North Africans. There are so many in France. I don't know if they're invading Germany also, but France has about 2 million or 3 million of North Africans. Berbers and Arabs. Well, of course, these people have been breeding very heavily since the occupation of the country by the French. In 1830, they were not so numerous, and they never needed to go outside the frontiers of North Africa, of Algiers. Now I think they are 10 times more numerous, or 15 times more numerous than they were in 1830. And they need space. Well, instead of invading their neighbors, they invade their former protecting country, you call them what you like. And they marry French girls. Well, it's the fault of the French girls, it's not the fault of the Arabs. If the French girls are not so natural, I mean, say, if they haven't got the sense of a tigress who will not mate with another species unless she's poor thing is forced to, or a lion. They have tried that experiment in the zoo of Vienna. Before the war, the zookeepers everybody who had a job in Austria, or the Greater Reich, was generally a member of the party. After the war, it seems, they dismissed all the zookeepers that had been Nazis. Now fancy that, as though they were going to make Nazi propaganda among the animals. The animals don't need it. The animals are naturally Nazis. At least the higher animals, the big cats, the felines. And they took into their heads to do an experiment, and they put an unfortunate lioness with a tiger. Well, the poor tiger didn't want the lioness, and the lioness didn't want the tiger, but what could they do? They are animals. Men can't keep control of their instincts, or I mean to say many men cannot. While speak of big felines. And they mated, and the product was a feline, they called that a tigre. Well, if I say a human being has not the sense that a tigress has, that is to say, willfully goes with a person of another race, it's not the fault of the person of the other race, it's the fault of the women. I disapprove strongly of these women, these French women, that go back with North Africans, or anything else, any other non-Aryan, and of the English women, well, in Cheltenham, I mean, say, that small place in the west of England, southwest of England, well, I went before going to the Cotswolds camp. I met 2 perambulators with half Negro babies in them. In a small town like that, let alone London. How do these things happen? How do these women come to do these things? That's what puzzles me. And if they do, well, they are not worthy to belong to the Aryan race. They should be dismissed. I would I would, if I were the dictator of England, I'd send them to work in some place where they have need of workers. Instead of putting a foreign worker, I would put them after sterilizing them. Because it's no good mating them with an Aryan afterwards. I suppose you know that the people that breed race dogs, say Alsatians or something like that, if an Alsatian bitch has been with a mongrel dog, they do not mate her with an Alsatian again. She's been impregnated once, it's sufficient. She's no longer useful for the breeding purposes. They might keep her if they like her, of course. I don't see why they shouldn't keep her. Poor dog, why kill her? No, certainly not. I'm not for killing her. But they don't mate her again. They don't have her mated again. And now, what should I speak of now?
Matker.
Matker. I like Matker. I admire him. He's a very worthy successor of Rockwell, and he has, well, it's not his fault, not Rockwell's fault, of course, but he has an advantage over Rockwell. He's a German. And that, in my eyes, is an advantage. I wish I'd become a German one day myself, if there is such a thing as reincarnation. I don't know whether I'd like to be a German or not, but at first sight, I'd like to be. On the other side, I don't know if I would like to be a German if I had to put up with the discipline in a German family. Supposing my father was an anti-Nazi, it can happen in Germany, you know. Supposing my father was an anti-Nazi and give me slaps and kick me about because of my ideas. That could happen. I wouldn't like it to happen. I'd rather be, say, something else, but a Nordic race, of course. To speak of Matt Kern, I like his articles. I read his articles in White Power. I like White Power immensely. I think it's one of the best papers that comes out in the USA. And I find that whatever he says is perfectly logical. Another thing, he never speaks of himself. He speaks of the ideology, and his book, the book he wrote, is very good. Very, very good, really. I have nothing to say except one thing. I'd like to meet him. I've never met him. I'd like to meet him very much. And I think he's most efficient. And let me see. I believe there's one thing I don't like in the movements of America. There are too many. There are too many. I don't like this idea of small National Socialist groups that exist only because somebody wants to be at the head of them. I'd like them to all meditate on the example of Streicher, Julius Streicher, the one of the Nuremberg martyrs who said Heil Hitler in front of the gallows. It was his last words. His words before that being, one day the Bolsheviks will treat you as you are treating us. Now Heil Hitler. And he went up. He was hanged. Well, this man, Julius Streicher, had a party of his own. He was the head of a, well, I would say National Socialist Party, a party with the same ideas. When Adolf Hitler was rising. But he saw, he felt that Adolf Hitler was the man. And he was worse, more than he was, that Streicher was. Streicher was sincere and disinterested. And disinterested attitude is the attitude for a National Socialist. What did Streicher do? He went to his followers and told them, the party is dissolved. I am dissolved. There's no more party of ours. You go and join the NSDAP. I'm joining the NSDAP myself. Hitler is our Führer. Führer of all the Germans. And he dismissed his own people and told them to join the other party, the growing party, the party of the future. Well, why don't these small leaders, those who are conscious at least of the efficiency of McCurry, why don't they tell their followers to join the NSWPP? There's another thing I feel rather shaky about, and I felt that already under Rockwell. It's the insistence in some of the literature supposed to be National Socialist from the USA of insisting on the idea of Christian and white. When I hear even the title of McCurry's organization, National Socialist White People's Party. Well, if I were a Jewess, I would join it. I would infiltrate it. I would try to destroy it from inside if I were Jewess. And I would get in because I'm white. Isn't it so? It's a funny thing to see that more Jews have not thought about it. Well, good for us if they are not so clever as they were once. If they are going down, good for us. But white is not necessarily Aryan. The Arabs are white. Real Arab, not mixed with Negro. But so many Arabs are mixed with Negro because they have harems and they like a variety of females. Unfortunately, variety of females makes variety of offspring. But those who are pure Arab, they are white. Berbers are white. Berbers are Mediterranean people that were in North Africa before the Arabs came. Jews are white, Jews are Semites. They are the first cousins of the Arabs. They might be enemies, but they are first cousins racially, or should be. The Assyrians, the Akkadians, all these people of Mesopotamia and of North Mesopotamia, of the Upper Euphrates, in the antiquity, they were white. Hittites were white. I don't know how far the Hittites were Aryan, or had Aryan mixture among them. I don't know. The language may be Aryan, but it doesn't mean to say that they were. Many people speak an Aryan language. Well, Negroes speak English today. And who doesn't? That doesn't mean to say they are Englishmen. Anyhow, white does not mean Aryan. The trouble is that in the USA today, the situation is such that the people's consciousness, simple people's consciousness, is white and black. If you say white, if they understand, they wouldn't understand the word Aryan, half of them. But it's dangerous, because Jews are white, and they are much more dangerous than Negroes. Clever Jews, much more dangerous than Negroes. Negroes are children. They not leave the Negroes to themselves, absolutely to themselves, without any foreign influence. And they're not dangerous at all, except that they breed fast. Well, put them in another surrounding, put them in a surrounding, say, in another place, and don't give them any development aid. That's one thing I'm against. This aid to the undeveloped. That should be stopped completely. Completely. And even more, I would say, I'm not for all this aid even to the developed. For instance, these societies, you have a number of societies, they were already existing in the days I was in France as a stopgap teacher. We had propaganda, such and such a society for, what do you call them, retardés, backward children. Backward children, sick people, etc., etc., supporting, giving money for them to be pushed along, to be not so undeveloped. Even the whites, even the Aryans, an Aryan that's not really up to the mark, is deficient, he shouldn't be encouraged, and encouraged to breed at that. I'm all for the steps Adolf Hitler took, wanted to take. He didn't take them, in fact. He couldn't take them, really, because the church was against them. Church could have made around, especially the Archbishop of Münster, von Galen. Von Galen used to preach against him in his pulpit, against these measures he wanted to take. These people should not be encouraged to live, because you cannot get a real strong Aryan society if you have these people in it, and if they breed. If they don't breed, all right. If you have a weak person that doesn't breed, it doesn't make any difference. But don't allow them to breed. Anyhow, that's one thing. White instead of Aryan. Another thing is that mixture of Aryan and Christian. I've had very good propaganda sent to me from an organization called the Sword of Christ in America, asking for the liberation of Rudolf Hess, nothing better, but telling us that all that from the so-called Christian point of view. I wrote to them, I told them what I thought of it, and they replied, telling me that the Jews, the Israelites, of antiquity, were originally Aryans. But how can we believe that? I know that's a theory. It doesn't come from them. It comes from a man called Saint-Yves d'Albètre, a Frenchman that wrote a book some century, 100 years ago, that got some queer theories like that. He also mixes up Jewish words and Sanskrit words. They look like each other, therefore they come from Sanskrit. They don't come from Sanskrit at all. It's just like so many stuff. So much stuff you read of old missionaries in India telling you, well, Hinduism comes from Judaism. Why? Well, very easy. One of the gods of Hinduism is Brahma. Brahma is Abraham. His wife is Saraswati. Saraswati is Sarah. All right. They put two words together and it's finished. There's no grammatical connection between Brahma and Abraham. Absolutely none. But still they put one where there is none. And Saint-Yves d'Albètre did exactly the same to support his theory that the ancient Israelites were Aryans. They were not Aryans at all. They were Semites, and always were Semites. They may be mixed with Aryans now. That's a different thing. And that is one of the reasons of their efficiency. When they mix with Aryans, especially with an Aryan, when an Aryan marries a Jewess, the child is a Jew. Child is a Jew from his mother, not from his father. If an Aryan marries a Jewess, the child is a Jew, according to Jewish law. And he gets some of the characteristics, some of the virtues of the Aryan race, along with some of the characteristics of the Jews. He might get the efficiency in trade from his father, and some sort of idealism, disinterested idealism from his mother. And then he's doubly dangerous. That's what I have to say about Rockwell and about who else do you want to hear? The future, my idea of the future is this. Either one lives in the eternal present and knows the future, doesn't see it as we see it through reasoning, but just is conscious of it. You have examples in history of this. For instance, the two last, the great master and one of his followers, the Templar Knights. They were burnt alive. Some say on the 11th, some say on the 18th of March, 1314. It is said that the great master, in the flames, spoke and said, I call you to God's tribunal, you both of you, the Pope, Clement V, within a month, and the King, Philip the Fair, within this year. And it was true. They both died. The Pope died on the 9th of April, and the King died on the 29th of November of the same year. How did that man know it? It was perfectly true. How did he know it? How did, long before him, how did Confucius know about modern China? Confucius was asked by his disciples, they say, how long will your doctrine rule China? And he said, 25 centuries, exactly. After 25 centuries, exactly, Mao Zedong came. With Mao Zedong, the rule of Confucianism, the rule of the spirit of Confucius, was put to an end. The Chinese does not any longer live for his ancestors, and in respect to his father and mother, he lives for the thoughts of Mao and the application of the thoughts of Mao. So he was right. How was he right? How did he know it? Why didn't he make a mistake of at least 2 or 3 centuries? He didn't. If he was on the margin, it was a margin of 50 years. This is knowing the future. Unfortunately, I have not that capacity. I don't live in the eternal present. To live into the eternal present, you have to be much higher than I am. Probably the Führer lived in the eternal present, because he knew when he was 16, according to the book of Kubitschek, Adolf Hitler, mein Jugendfreund. He knew when he was 16 that he would rise and fall. Like Rienzi. He told Kubitschek when he was coming out of the show, Rienzi, in Linz, one evening. But very few people do live in that way. For those who don't, well, the future is a matter of reasoning, of conjecture. You suppose this and suppose that. From the data of the present and from the data of the past, you do some comparisons and you try to deduct the future. But this is nonsense. Nobody can deduct the future from the present or the past. At least the far future, perhaps the near future, and in small things of every day. Supposing it is known that in the locality there is a shop that shuts on Mondays. Well, I'm perfectly sure, practically sure, that if I go on Thursday, I'll find it open. That's very easy, that's the future, but it's a very near future and very paltry kind of how do you say, matter. But to tell you whether there's going to be a war before the end of this century or not, nobody knows. Because any event in the future depends on many factors. And the most obvious factors are not always the most important. Not always the most important. There is a very great speech, or the sermon, of the Bishop of Meaux, Bossuet. It is known as one of those who spoke the most beautiful French. He's given to children of college boys and girls to read for his French. And he used to give sermons on the death of great people. There is one famous sermon of his on the death of Henrietta of England, who had married the brother of the King of France, Louis XIV, Louis XIV. And she lived in Cromwell's day. And there's a passage in that sermon about Cromwell and about the trouble he had. He died of stone, what do you call it? Stone in the, not in the bladder, but in the tube that goes down from the bladder to the lower parts of the body. I don't know what the tube is called. In French it's called urètre. Well, Bossuet says, a stone, a tiny little stone. If it had been anywhere else, in Cromwell's body, it wouldn't have made any difference. But it happened to be just in that tube. And he died. Now, how? Of course, the death of Cromwell was something important in English history. And it was not foretellable. You couldn't say it 20 years before. Who knows what will happen to such person or this person or that person from a tiny little cause like this, a physiological cause. And that goes for the future. If Roosevelt had died 20 years earlier, he could have died, nobody knows. Life and death are in the hands of forces that we don't know anything about, the world history would have been different. World history would have been different. They say political assassination is generally useless because of some other man. One wants to suppress a movement. The movement is represented by a man. One kills that man, some other man appears. It depends. Political assassination is generally useless because it comes too late. It comes too late. It always comes too late. To know that this man is dangerous is the cause of his assassination. If somebody, knowing the future, had known that when the man was a baby and killed the baby, the history would have been different. History would have been different. Imagine supposing somebody had killed Stalin when he was 6. That would have been, the history would have been different. Or anybody else, any great man. You know the great man too late, and you get rid of him too late. You should have the insight. We say the insight you have to live in the eternal present, and that's not the affair of most people. But if you lived in the eternal present and could know that this man is going to be dangerous for this purpose, and you want that purpose, you want that thing, you love that ideology or whatever you like, that state of things, you want to get the man out, get him out when he's a child, before he begins to start, before he knows himself what he's going to do. That's what I want to say about the future. So I cannot say anything about the future. I just don't know it. I'm not living in the eternal present. All I know is this. Do, every one of us, what we can now. The future is made of many factors. One of the factors is now. And whatever one does counts. Whatever one says counts. Whatever one thinks counts perhaps even more. I actually believe that thought is a force. Thought is something that comes from our nerves. It's a sort of it's a radiating force. It's waves, if you like. They're waves of thought. We emit waves. These waves have an effect. Very small effect, of course. Smaller or bigger according to the person. But it has an effect. I would say, why don't you try to do one thing? Get together every day, or every 2 days, or every week, or twice a week, at the same place, and especially at the same time. Time is very important. And intensely think. Don't do anything else. Intensely think about what you would like to happen. You have to think all the same. All the people united in one place have to think the same thing. Intensely think of what you want the future to be. Intensely think of, say, something simple. How to change the status of the USA or of Canada or North America. How to do it. Think that. Say the superior forces of the universe help us to do this or that. To bring out the responsible people for the mess in which the Aryan race is now in. And how to get it out. I think that is useful. Now, one thing also, I think we have to walk in the footsteps of the Führer in many ways, in all ways, in fact. And there are certain things going on, especially in Canada. I cannot end the speech without saying that. It's something that hurt me so much and still makes me shudder every time I think of it. We should follow the spirit of the Führer in every way. And one thing that would have made the Führer indignant if he had known it is that mass massacre of seals on the coast of Canada. I've not seen it, I've seen pictures of it, and it's more than enough for me. Poor baby seals, so beautiful, trusting creatures that you can tame them if you like. Just killed, and how killed? A knock on the head and their skin pulled off all alive, practically alive. Their skins stolen from them. To steal their skins was massacres of these beautiful creatures. Trusting creatures that do no harm to anybody. And one has the cheek of criticizing us for treating our enemies badly. And sometimes without us doing it. Take the Malmedy case. These SS men that were so tortured in prison that Van Roden, an American, we'll say Dutch origin American, had to come to Germany to investigate the case. They were not even, some of them were not even in Malmedy. And some of them being there had no part in the shooting of some American prisoners. They had nothing to do with it. And still, just because they were SS men of that same division or what, they were tortured in the most awful manner because they were wanted to be. You had to be condemned. But criticizing people for torturing for using their enemies badly and allowing in one's own country what goes on against the seals. There should be something to stop that. There were 10 million seals. Now there are 800,000. What happened to the rest? I can see them. I can see them skinned. I can see the corpses skinned, lying on the in the snow in pools of blood. Take away that sight. That's an awful thing. And to think, once even more awful than that, is to think that some Aryan men do it for $2.50 each. How can they do it? They are disgracing the race. Every Aryan who does something horrid disgraces his race, disgraces his children first. In the old Chinese, let's say, old China, a man who did something wonderful was awarded. He was made noble. His sons were not noble, his fathers were. His fathers were responsible for his birth. They were made noble. He was perhaps a peasant, did something very good, something extremely good, I need to say. And the emperor gave him some nobility. It went backwards. There were very many good things in old China. There was another thing. Let me tell you that in 5 minutes, it's just a parenthesis. You have a doctor when you are sick. You go to the doctors when you are sick, and you pay him for what he says. In old China, you didn't do that. Every family had a family doctor. And they used to pay him a small sum as long as they were well. He didn't do anything. He just received the money from so many families. As long as these family members were all well. Once somebody fell sick, then they called the doctor. The doctor's pay was stopped. They did not pay him any more until the person got well. If it took a long time to cure the person, he had no pay. If he wanted the person if he wanted his pay, he had to cure the person quickly. I find that much more reasonable than what we have. He had interest in curing the person quickly. Now a doctor has interest in making the person stay sick as long as possible to receive, say, some pay. Isn't it so? There was some wisdom in antiquity in all countries. And of course, among our own people, nobody has to learn from me. This is a thing that you all know of the wise women of the ancient Germans. There were wise women in ancient Germany, say 4, 5, 6 centuries, up till 30,000 BC, prehistoric Germany, prehistoric Europe, north of Europe, and they were very celebrated in the art of healing as well as in the counsel they could give, in the advice they could give for governing. So, that much for history. And the future, well, I wish the future is what we want it to be. And I try my best thinking as often as I can. As often as I can. And at fixed hours. And if I'm with another person, I ask the other person to think also. Thinking what we want it to be. And trying our best. Living lives up to the example and up to the idea of the Führer. For instance, the Führer was a vegetarian, a perfect vegetarian. He didn't smoke and he didn't take any alcohol. How many of us do the same? Percent. How many? He didn't ask anybody to do it. He says in his Tischgespräche, I suppose most of you have read this Tischgespräche of the Führer. He says, if I had made these items a condition of belonging to the NSDAP, I would have had nobody. Therefore, I could not make them a condition. But he felt that they were things important in a life. Of course, if you drink no alcohol, your blood is pure, more pure, and you are stronger than if you do. It's artificial. It's a kind of drug. Of drugs, of course, no knowledge. No knowledge. No speaking of drugs. Outlook. And people nowadays tell me that in USA, there are children 12 that are already addicted to drugs. Why do they do it? I was offered drug when I was 17 in Greece by a Greek woman, morphine. I said no. I'll never take a drug in all my life. As far as alcohol, well, I took Samos wine and Malaga wine once or twice in my whole life. And once it played me a bad trick. It was a birthday party in Athens. And I brought a bottle of Samos wine. I like Samos wine. And I like these old wines, cooked wines. I don't like other ordinary wine, nor champagne. Cooked wines I really like. I brought it to this young man, the son of one of my friends. And there was a party, there were Germans, there were English people, there were Greeks. And she said, you brought the wine. You will have just a little bottom of a glass with us. I said, don't ask me to take any wine. I don't put up with it. I get nervous and I don't know what to say. I get excited. So don't ask me, just a little bit, just a centimeter. All right, I took a centimeter. And I drank it with delight, although it burns. I'm not used to it, so it burns nice. But it was nice. Samos wine is very nice. And then, after this party, we were all asked to sing a little song. And some Germans said to me, oh, you know German, you must be knowing some German songs. Sing us a German song. Well, I said, all right. And I sang, wir sind die Sturmkolonnen, wir gehen drauf und dran. Wir sind die ersten Reihen der deutschen Revolution. Sprung auf die Barrikaden, der Tod besiegt uns nur, etc. Wir sind die Sturmkolonnen der Hitler-Diktatur. That is the greatest part of the song. This is the beginning and the end. I sang that. Some people were delighted, but some were not. It would have been better if I had not drank any wine at all. That's what happens to me when I drink even a little wine. I cannot control my speech. In vino veritas. And that's not the point. I don't mind if you say, if a person drinks a little bit of schnapps for Christmas or something like on a great occasion. Christmas being the winter solstice, of course. That's no harm. But drinking every day and drinking too much. I know that in cold countries people drink a lot. You can put up with it in cold countries, you can't in hot countries. You can't in hot countries at all. You get ruined. But it's not so bad as drug. Drug, and then there's this other thing. There's this widespread propaganda in order to destroy our race. It's willfully done. Propaganda of the excellence, of the indispensable character of sex. Even to children. Telling people that if you don't have that, well, what are you missing? And that is disastrous. That is disastrous because it's one of the signs of the Dark Age, as said by the Hindu scriptures, that if the marriage bond is no longer duty, but pleasure only, and money, is the beginning of the end. It's the Dark Age. And that's what they preach. They preach, enjoy yourself. You are here to have a good time. You are on earth to have a good time. No, we are not on earth to have a good time. We are only individuals. We are on earth to serve that which is in us eternal. And the only eternal thing in anybody is the race. You are immortal if you have children. And the children of your own kind. You are immortal if you have works. I don't see works that are known in the old cathedrals of Europe. If you look at the sculptures, you have some little details that are perfect as sculptures. The workman who sculptured that one detail, some 1,000 years ago, or let's say 800 years ago, in the 12th century. That man is immortal. You don't know his name. He's immortal all the same. His work lasted. And the work doesn't last as long as the race. The race will outlive the work. Work is something that depends on climate. In a damp country, a sculpture will not last as long as in a dry one. But race, if it's kept pure, will last. And that is what I'd like to say. And that is the reason, of course, of the bondage of marriage. And it's not to be made a plaything. It's not to be made a pastime. It's a sacred thing for a purpose in the spirit of the Führer. He said he was all for early marriage, and he was for many children of good Aryan blood. He told the people that were not of perfect Aryan blood, or who were deficient in the bodily way. He said, you can't have children, all right, you're not to have any. You can adopt an Aryan child. I like the propaganda of the NSWPP. Adoption, not abortion. When they go and picket in front of the abortionist clinics and tell the people, don't do any abortions of Aryan children. We are not so numerous proportionately to others. Negroes multiply 10 times as quick as we do. In England also, and that's the danger. No other danger, that in itself is a danger. Don't abort Aryan children. Let the mothers have them. The mother doesn't want the child, all right. Find a couple without any children who is willing to take it. Or even a couple with children that's willing to bring it up as a brother or sister of their own children. Why not? Why not? If I had money, if I had in my life, I never had a fixed job. If I had a fixed job with a fixed income, I would have liked to adopt an Aryan child myself and bring it up in my own spirit. I would have inquired into the family. I would have inquired. Failing that, when Mr. Mukherjee had a job, and when I thought it was stable, it wasn't, of course, but I thought it was in those days, I told him, we are outside the pale of, breeding and all that. We are faithful to the caste system, both of us. All right, we don't want any intimacy in any children. But I wouldn't mind adopting a little boy or a little girl of your caste. An orphan of good Brahmanic stock. He didn't want it. He didn't want to take the responsibility, probably feeling that his situation, his financial situation was not stable. In fact, after the war, he had no job at all. He had some kind of earnings during the war, but after the war he no longer earned anything at all. And he was right. He lived his last years living on his astrology. And an astrologer in India doesn't earn so much as that, because so many astrologers there are. But anyhow, he pulled on. That would have been enough to give education to a boy. But I'm all for this propaganda. Abortion, no abortion. Adoption instead of abortion. Quite good. And encourage people to have children. Not one or two, but if they can afford to, bring them up decently. And what does it mean, bring them up decently? Bringing them up decently means well-fed, cleanly lodged. I don't say lodged in luxury, cleanly lodged. Well-fed as they need to be fed for their health, and given a sound, good education, a general education and an ideological education. And that's all. It doesn't mean to say to have a TV. You can live without a TV. You can live without a radio. There's our comrade in France, Augier de Saint-Loup, the author of several books, the author of a trilogy of the fight for our ideology in Russia, the LVF, Légion Volontaire Française, and then the SS, Waffen-SS, and another third book called The Nostalgic People. This trilogy, very good books. He has no radio in his house, and no TV. He doesn't want the appliances, just as I don't want them. Myself, I never had a radio. I listened to the radio during the war at my landlord's place. I only listened to one thing, the Führer's speeches. I never listened to anything else. And Mr. Mukherjee used to come and listen with me, although his German was anything but good, but he wanted to hear his voice. That's all. But you can live without that. Instead of spending so much on these kind of things, which after all are just propaganda, and the enemy's propaganda, why not spend that on an extra child? Have an extra child. It's very good. Have, I would say, even a pet. It's good for children to be born with a young animal. It teaches them to learn, to love creatures, to love nature. If you have a garden, plant something beautiful in your garden. It's a good thing to be in touch, to put children in touch with nature, to keep them in touch with nature. It teaches them to love nature. And love of nature is one of the things that Adolf Hitler had. Germany still, in spite of all the devastations of after the war, still has 1/3 of her surface covered with forests. It's one of the very seldom countries in Europe that has that. Sweden, of course. Sweden has a small population. But more simple living, not so much artificiality, not so much uselessness in life, and more concentration on health, beauty, ideology. Truth. Health, beauty, truth. And there are many things that we could take from the Jews. I very often said, if we had some of the virtues that the Jews have, there would never have been a Jewish question. And one of them is this, solidarity. If a Jew goes bankrupt, other Jews will bring him up 3 times. He can be three times bankrupt. He will survive with the money of the other Jews. In my native town, there was a Greek that tried business and failed. Son of a Greek, son of a friend of mine. His father and mother gave him some money. He wanted to do cloth business. Well, the cloth market in Lyon, as well as everywhere else, is a monopoly of the Jews practically. This young boy failed. Oh, the other Greeks laughed at him. Why did he try business when he was not fit for it? That's all. Well, even try business, sounds right. Jews would never have said that of him. They would have picked him up once, twice, 3 times. Now, every Jew in Lyon, every Jew in Saint-Étienne, France, I know those 2 towns very well, gives 1/10 of his income to Israel. If every person with an income, I wish I had one, I'm living on private lessons and have no fixed income, but if every person with an income could give even 1/20 to these National Socialist organizations, to one National Socialist organization, it's a pity there are more than one, it would make a great difference. It would make a great difference. Supposing, well, you cannot yet think of the head of the NSWPP becoming President of the United States. Why is that unthinkable? Why is it unthinkable, after all? Because you need an enormous quantity of money to do that. Presidential propaganda. And you don't get the media. You will never get the television hours for propaganda to be president, unless you are